Chapter 705. Valley of the Medicine Masters, Earth Source Pavilion. Spirit Vein Godly Spirit, the antidote pill has been successfully refined. You can come out now. Hearing Yuhauran's call, the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit hurriedly left the source of the Spirit Vein and appeared in front of Yuhauran. Here. Yuhauran directly threw the antidote pill that he had prepared in advance to the blue dragon and waited for its next move. He wanted to see if it completely trusted him and took the antidote pill directly, or if it doubted him and checked to make sure there was no problem before taking it. Because of the different choices made by the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit, it would have a different attitude towards him after the life-devouring pill was removed. Facing the antidote pill that Yuhauran threw, the blue dragon directly opened its mouth and swallowed the antidote pill. Yuhauran was very satisfied with the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit's unreserved trust. He took out a pill bottle with 2 antidote pills and threw it to the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit as he instructed. As a poison pill on the 100 poisons ranking, the poison in the life-devouring pill cannot be completely removed with just 1 antidote pill. Take 1 antidote pill every 3 days and you will recover after 9 days. Thank you, my friend. Receiving the pill bottle that Yuhauran threw, the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit hurriedly thanked him. Waving his hand, Yuhauran indicated that the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit did not need to be so polite. Then, he closed his eyes and began to feel the divine consciousness imprint that he had left on Meng Yujie and finally determined her specific location. Using his divine consciousness, he told the Spirit Vein Godly Spirit where Meng Yujie was and instructed it to send him directly to the courtyard where Meng Yujie was. The Cold Fragrance Pavilion was considered an outstanding pavilion among the hundreds of courtyards and pavilions in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Now, before the formal apprenticeship ceremony, the Great Elder had arranged for Meng Yujie to stay in the Cold Fragrance Pavilion. It was enough to see how much the Great Elder valued her. Bam bam! Men and women were different and it was rude to barge into a girl's pavilion, so Yuhauran reached out and knocked on the courtyard door, using a more gentlemanly way to meet Meng Yujie. Of course, he had already asked Thaling to use his divine consciousness to check the surroundings before deciding to use this method to meet Meng Yujie. After all, he could not harm the innocent Meng Yujie. Please come in. Hearing the knock, Meng Yujie's slightly nervous voice came from the courtyard. Sister Meng Yujie. Yuhauran saw Meng Yujie standing nervously in the middle of the courtyard and hurriedly called out to her when he saw her. Meng Yujie replied after bowing slightly. Meng Yujie, Meng Yujie, Meng Yujie. Meng Yujie Pavilion. Unfortunately, Yu Shixiang killed an elder of my Heart Moon sect in the valley at the entrance of the Blue Moon secret realm. This caused the relationship between our sects to be very tense. Even if I wanted to visit Yu Shixiang, the sect would not agree. Yuhauran did not give any response or explanation to Meng Yujie's lamentation. Instead, he suddenly turned around and looked straight into her eyes. Meng Yujie, I have a secret technique that can see a person's hidden special constitution. I'm sorry, Meng Yujie. Actually, when I first saw you in the Blue Moon secret realm, I used this secret technique to check your constitution. I found that you actually have the Spirit of Medicine constitution, which is ranked 25th among the thousands of special constitutions in the Xian-Tian continent. The Spirit of Medicine constitution is a special constitution that is most suitable to become an alchemist. In the future, you have a great chance of breaking through to the Pill Emperor realm. At this point, Yuhauran subconsciously helped Meng Yujie brush away a few strands of hair on her forehead, and said sincerely, "This is the reason why I can't bring you out of the Medicine King Valley. Because only in the sacred land of alchemy, the Medicine King Valley, can you receive the most formal and systematic learning of alchemy. Only then can you better stimulate your Spirit of Medicine constitution and give you the hope of breaking through to the Pill Emperor realm in the future." Meng Yujie, If I bring you out of the Medicine King Valley, I will not be helping you. Instead, I will be harming you. Yu Shixiang, I understand. I will take the Great Elder as my master and seriously learn alchemy from him. Chapter 706 Valley of the Medicine Masters, Cold Fragrance Pavilion. Seeing that Meng Yujie finally realized the importance of staying in the Valley of the Medicine Masters and becoming the disciple of the head elder, Yu Haoran secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As explained just now, his alchemy cultivation was transformed from the cultivation of the Tao of poison, and then integrated with the insights of many different types of alchemists. It could be considered a pot of mishmash, and was not suitable to guide the cultivation of Meng Yujie, who had the spirit of medicine body. If it was just to win Meng Yujie over to join Qingyun Peak, taking her away from the Valley of the Medicine Masters would not only not be helping her, but would also be harming her. What's more, Yu Haoran also had no way to change Meng Yujie's ugly appearance so that she would have a peerless beauty in the future. Taking Meng Yujie's hand, he sat back down on the stone chair in the pavilion, and then took out a secret alchemy manual, 3 sets of insights from the alchemy grandmaster realm, and a jade slip of his own insights into alchemy, and placed them in front of her. Yu Haoran explained in detail. Junior Sister Meng, the secret alchemy manual and the alchemy grandmaster's insights were specially selected for you from the Pill Pavilion of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It can help you build a solid foundation when you first come into contact with alchemy. And this jade slip summarizes some of my own insights into alchemy, and should be able to help you master excellent alchemy techniques faster. Yu Shixiang, these treasures are too precious. Shaking her head, Meng Yujie instinctively wanted to refuse, but Yu Haoran reached out to stop her. Junior Sister Meng, although we were not from the same sect before, but as a subsidiary sect of the 100 Qi Gate, there must be legends of me, Yu Haoran, in the Heart Moon Gate. Yu Haoran said domineeringly as he reached out to take the manual, the notes, and the jade slip and force them into her hands. As long as it is something that I, Yu Haoran, give out, you have to accept it whether you want to accept it or not. Otherwise, you intend to be my enemy. Speaking of this, the domineering tone suddenly turned murderous. Although I, Yu Haoran, treat my friends with the warmth of spring, I treat my enemies with the cruelty of winter. So, whether you are an enemy or a friend is up to you. Alright. Facing Yu Haoran's seemingly unreasonable and overbearing attitude, Meng Yujie felt a sweetness in her heart. She obediently nodded and accepted the secret manual, letter, and jade slip. That's right. Seeing Meng Yujie obediently accept the jade slip, Yu Haoran said with a chuckle. Then, he stood up and said goodbye. Junior Meng, I still have some very important matters to attend to, so I can't stay in the Medicine King's Valley for too long. If fate wills it, let's meet again. Are we leaving now? Meng Yujie, who had also stood up, said with a reluctant expression. I have to go. Nodding, Yu Haoran turned around and left the pavilion. However, just as he was about to step out of the pavilion, he suddenly stopped and looked at Meng Yujie. Junior Meng, before leaving the Medicine King's Valley, I still have 2 things to tell you. Yu Shixiang, tell me. Meng Yujie quickly put away her reluctant expression and listened carefully. First, do not ever mention to anyone in the valley that you and I know each other. Otherwise, you will definitely be ostracized by many alchemists. Second, the secret manual, letter, and jade slip that I just gave you cannot be known by the head elder. Otherwise, your life will be in danger. Yu Shixiang, I understand. Meng Yujie nodded heavily and said, Goodbye, Junior Meng. Waving his hand, Yu Haoran stepped out of the Cold Fragrance Pavilion. After leaving the Cold Fragrance Pavilion, Yu Haoran ordered the Spirit Vein Soul, send me out of the Medicine King's Valley. Young friend, in fact, as long as I, the Blue Dragon, am here, the Valley Master and the Head Elder will never and dare not hurt you. Perhaps because of Yu Haoran's casual style of doing things, the Spirit Vein Soul admired and envied him very much. It also did not want Yu Haoran to leave so soon. Looking up in the direction of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, Yu Haoran said gently, I am not afraid of Gu Zi and Gao Xingjie leaving the Medicine King's Valley, but because there is a very important person waiting for me. Alright. Nodding, the spirit vain soul did not try to persuade him to stay and personally led Yu Haoran out of the Medicine King's Valley to a small forest about 100 miles away from the Medicine King's Valley. Young friend, this is still the edge of the spirit vain soul's extension. I can only send you here. The blue dragon condensed by the spirit vain soul appeared and solemnly bid him farewell. Thank you. Cupping his fists in gratitude, he waved his hand and motioned for the spirit vain soul to return to the Medicine King's Valley. You can go back. Then, he turned his head and instructed the black bear that was being sent out of the Medicine King's Valley at the same time. Black bear, transform, we are going to the Emperor Qin Kingdom. After the black bear took off, Yu Haoran stood on the back of the black bear and looked at the Medicine King's Valley that was getting smaller and smaller. He could not help but sigh. Originally, he thought that this trip to the Medicine King's Valley would be a harmonious gathering of guests, but he did not expect this outcome. Fortunately, the harvest this time was beyond his expectations, and it eased his gloomy mood greatly. The Emperor Qin Kingdom, Xianyang City. After the Lunar Lantern Festival, the festive atmosphere of the new year should have gradually disappeared and the entire imperial capital would return to its previous peaceful life. But with a piece of breaking news from the palace, the entire imperial capital was suddenly jubilant and the atmosphere was even livelier than during the new year. This was because Princess Ling Fei, who was known as the Pearl of the Empire, was about to hold a grand engagement ceremony with the deputy leader of the 100 Qi Gate, Yu Haoran, who was at the pinnacle of the Pil Dao. After receiving this news, whether it was in the imperial capital, Xianyang City, or in the various cities of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, it was as if they had heard bad news. They could not believe that the girl of their dreams, the person they had worked so hard for, had become someone else's fiancé. Who was Yu Haoran? Relying on the abilities of the nobles, they were able to find out everything very quickly. If it was a talent whose status and identity were similar to Princess Ling Fei's, although they were unwilling, they could still reluctantly accept it. But a mere deputy leader of a small second-rate sect, a small ant in the martial grandmaster realm, actually wanted to marry their dream girl, Princess Ling Fei. They could not accept it, were not willing, and were not willing. Therefore, nearly 1,000 nobles banded together and formed a protection team to protect their beloved. Their goal was to prevent the engagement ceremony between Yu Haoran and Princess Ling Fei on the 2nd of February. What was even more outrageous was that the nobles of Xianyang City, the nobles of the imperial capital's city guard army, and the nobles of the various commanders of the Imperial Guard used their families' influence to set up an inescapable net at the 4 gates of Xianyang City, intending to prevent Yu Haoran from entering Xianyang City. Chapter 707. Xianyang City, Northern City Gate. Brat, you're delusional to think that you can marry the Honorable Princess Ling Fei with your bare face. I think you're just a toad lusting after the flesh of a swan. A handsome young man with a feminine temperament mocked with disdain. His master looked like a bear. After hearing the evaluation of the feminine young man, He Xiong, who was standing beside Yu Haoran, couldn't help but glance at Yu Haoran in confusion. When he discovered that Yu Haoran didn't look like him at all, he couldn't help but scratch his head with a puzzled expression. Scram! He Xiong's action of comparing their appearances caused Yu Haoran to feel deeply depressed, and he couldn't help but berate him. Who are you? Soon after, he took a step forward and questioned with a gloomy expression. The son of the Marquis of Flat Arrow, Qiaoemu. The feminine young man arrogantly introduced himself. Qiaoemu, why are you stopping me from entering Xianyang City? The Marquis of Flat Arrow was an old aristocratic family of the Emperor Qin's kingdom. He had once followed the 3rd Emperor Qin, the Emperor Qin's kingdom's third emperor, on expeditions all over the world and had made illustrious military achievements. However, circumstances had changed with the passage of time. The once glorious Flat Arrow Marquis residence was now only an ordinary aristocratic family of Xianyang City. Therefore, Yu Haoran didn't need to give him any face and directly called him by his name. Impudent! How can a lowly commoner like you call the young Marquis by his name? After hearing Yu Haoran directly call out Xiao Yimu's name, a guard at the peak of 9th grade Marshal King standing behind Xiao Yimu immediately berated him. It was you who called me a lowly commoner, wasn't it? Although he still had a smile on his face, his interrogative tone caused countless people to feel a trace of coldness. He Xiong, who also felt the coldness in Yu Haoran's tone, immediately raised his paw in excitement and prepared to attack. That's right. The guard, who didn't sense the strange atmosphere, arrogantly replied. Did I say something wrong? Yu Haoran didn't know what right the Marquis of Flat Arrow, who was in a worse state than the 100 Qi Gate, had to be so arrogant. Yu Haoran couldn't be bothered to continue arguing with him, so he instructed He Xiong. Smash him into a meat patty. Yu Haoran's voice had just left his mouth when a bare paw directly smashed the guard who had shouted at him into a meat patty. You actually dared to kill people on the street? Xiao Yimu asked with a pale face. Fanning his nose with his left hand, Yu Haoran cast a disdainful glance at Xiao Yimu before turning around, intending to enter Xianyang City. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, no matter how cowardly his opponents were, there had never been a person like Xiao Yimu who was so scared that he wet his pants. Presumably, the incompetence of the younger generation was the true reason for the decline of the Flat Arrow Marquis residence. Friend, you think you can leave safely after killing people at the gates of the capital of the state of Qin? Don't you think you have no regard for the laws of the state of Emperor Qin? Just as Yu Haoran was about to step past Xiao Yimu and enter Xianyang City, a youth leaning against the city wall threatened him with a smile. Compared to the frivolous Xiao Yimu, the refined youth not only appeared steadier, but his methods were also more sinister and ruthless. He had directly determined that Xiao Yimu's rage and killing people was a violation of the laws of the state of Qin. Who are you? Yu Haoran asked impatiently with a frown. The son of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites, Qin Fengxiu, the youth said with a hint of arrogance. Xiao Yimu had already worn away the joy in his heart, so when faced with Qin Fengxiu's sinister provocation, a trace of killing intent arose in his heart. Since you are the son of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites, you must know about the conflict I had with the Ministry of Rites some time ago. According to Yu Haoran's lawless character, aren't you afraid that I will kill you on the spot? Although killing intent surged in his heart, considering Qin Fengxiu's extraordinary background and the fact that he had the same surname as Qin Lingfei, he was worried that if he killed Ling Fei's cousin by mistake, it would affect the engagement ceremony in a few days. Therefore, he could only do his best to suppress the killing intent in his heart as he threatened. Looking at Yu Haoran with contempt, Qin Fengxiu straightened his body and took the initiative to provoke him. Do you dare? Yu Haoran, the old man 10 meters away from that kid, is a peak 7th grade martial saint expert who has comprehended the law of speed. Moreover, he has already secretly mobilized the law of speed and is waiting for you to order Black Bear to attack. Then, he will take the opportunity to kill Black Bear. Facing Qin Fengxiu's provocation, according to Yu Haoran's character, how could he let him do as he pleased? Therefore, Yu Haoran subconsciously planned to order Black Bear to kill Qin Fengxiu. However, at this moment, the Thaling in his sea of consciousness suddenly reminded him. Following the Thaling's reminder, Yu Haoran's gaze fell on the slightly hunchbacked old man with messy hair 10 meters away from Qin Fengxiu. He was wearing a gray shirt made of coarse cloth. If it weren't for the Thaling's reminder, no one would have thought that this old man, who looked like a farmer, was actually a peak 7th grade martial saint expert who had grasped the law of speed. Qin Fengxiu had made full use of his lawless and impulsive character to provoke him to attack and use this opportunity to get rid of Black Bear. Qin Fengxiu's scheming and methods made Yu Haoran vigilant. At the same time, he also instantly thought of a way to deal with him. Taking a deep breath, he suppressed the surging killing intent in his heart. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Then, Yu Haoran took out a jade pendant from his storage ring. The back of the jade pendant was engraved with the words, "I am here," and a 5-clawed golden dragon engraved on the front. Then, he raised the jade pendant and looked at Qin Fengxiu, the old man in plain clothes who was ready to kill the Black Bear at any time. The jade pendant that His Majesty carries with him. After seeing the jade pendant raised in Yu Haoran's hand, Qin Fengxiu turned pale with fright. Then, with a face full of unwillingness, he took the initiative to kneel down and shouted loudly, "Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!" Seeing that even the son of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites, Qin Fengxiu, had taken the initiative to kneel down and greet him, whether it was the soldiers in the city, the hedonistic young masters in embroidered clothes, or the surrounding people, they all bent their knees and shouted loudly, "Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!" Only the old man in coarse clothes stood in place without moving an inch. "How dare you not kneel after seeing the jade pendant that His Majesty personally bestowed upon you by His Majesty?" While using his spiritual sense to inform Black Bear to be on guard, Yu Haoran raised the jade pendant in his hand and shouted loudly. Coldly looking at Yu Haoran, a trace of contempt flashed in the eyes of the old man in coarse clothes, but he still did not move. In response, Yu Haoran sneered in his heart. Then, with a gloomy expression, he asked Qin Fengxiu, "Young Master Qin, as the son of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites, you must be familiar with the laws of the Emperor Qin Kingdom." Chapter 708 Xianyang City, in front of the North City Gate. Facing Yu Haoran's question, Qin Fengxiu was speechless and did not know how to answer. "Who is on duty in the city guard army?" Knowing that Qin Fengxiu would not answer his question, Yu Haoran immediately looked at a middle-aged man in soft armor kneeling beside the city gate. "Zhang Yihai greets the prince consort." Seeing Yu Haoran looking at him, the middle-aged man in soft armor had to take the initiative to stand up and greet him. "Lord Zhang, I ask you, what is the punishment for not greeting the Emperor?" Yu Haoran asked again, shaking the jade pendant in his hand at Zhang Yihai. "According to the law, beheading." Zhang Yihai secretly glanced at Qin Fengxiu and found that he was clenching his hands and bowing his head in silence. He could not give him any hint, so Zhang Yihai could only answer truthfully. "That's good." After hearing Zhang Yihai's answer, Yu Haoran nodded with satisfaction and then ordered loudly, "Zhang Yihai, listen to my order." Zhang Yihai, who was startled by Yu Haoran's loud voice, responded subconsciously, "Yes, sir." This lowly person offended his superiors and despised the Emperor. "I order you to take him down and hand him over to me for investigation," Yu Haoran ordered, pointing at the old man in plain clothes. Facing Yu Haoran's order, Zhang Yihai was suddenly in a dilemma. If he obeyed Yu Haoran's order and went forward to arrest the old man in plain clothes, not to mention himself, even if all the soldiers guarding the city gate in the North City were to attack together, they would not be able to withstand the old man in plain clothes. If he did not obey Yu Haoran's order, it would be a violation of the Emperor's order. After that, Yu Haoran would report it to the Emperor. Not only would he be beheaded, but he was afraid that his family would be implicated. Because according to the law of the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, those who violated the Emperor's order would be executed together with their whole family. After much consideration, Zhang Yihai, who valued family ties, finally chose to listen to Yu Haoran's orders. "Soldiers, take him down." Zhang Yihai turned his head and called out to the dozens of soldiers at the city gate. He took the lead and charged towards the old man. Seeing Zhang Yihai charging over, a cold glint flashed across the old man's eyes. He secretly activated the law of speed. Then, everyone saw an incomparably shocked expression. Zhang Yihai, who had rushed less than 3 meters away, suddenly had a spin in his head, and then fell to the ground with a loud bang, dead. The old man's body only swayed slightly. Seeing the plain-clothed old man easily kill Zhang Yihai, not only did Yu Haoran's expression change, he subconsciously took a few steps back. Qin Fengxiu, who was kneeling on the ground, instantly paled. This was because he knew that the matter was completely out of control. If he didn't handle it properly, it would even implicate the vice minister's residence. Insolent madman, Lord Zhang is still a pillar of our Emperor Qin's kingdom. You dared to kill Lord Zhang on the street, which means you intend to become an enemy of our great Emperor Qin's kingdom. As a loyal subject of the empire, how can I, Qin Fengxiu, allow you to be so rampant? How could he prevent the vice minister's residence from being implicated? The only way was to let the old man who killed Zhang Yihai escape. As long as there was no conclusive evidence, no one could do anything to the vice minister's residence, which was deeply entrenched in power. Thus, Qin Fengxiu righteously rebuked while bitterly pleading with his divine sense. Uncle Li, you've caused a great disaster. You might even implicate my father. Right now, you can only flee far away from Xianyang City and have my father think of a way to quell today's disaster. So, your nephew begs you. Quickly leave Xianyang City. Hearing Qin Fengxiu's pleas, the old man couldn't help but frown. He then raised his head and glanced at Qin Fengxiu. Seeing the pleading look in Qin Fengxiu's eyes, the old man softly sighed and decided to listen to his suggestion and temporarily leave Xianyang City. However, when he saw Yu Haoran and He Xiong from the corner of his eye, a cold light flashed through his eyes. Afterwards, he decided to kill Yu Haoran and He Xiong. After removing a great threat from the vice minister's residence, he would leave Xianyang City. Using the law of speed, the old man used almost instantaneous movement to appear in front of Yu Haoran. He planned to use the same method to snap Yu Haoran's neck. But just as he raised his hands, a terrifying power that made him tremble surged out from Yu Haoran's body. You're courting death. Yu Haoran's face instantly flushed red, and his voice was hoarse as he looked at the old farmer and roared with a ferocious expression. Afterwards, he pointed at the old farmer and softly muttered, "Flourishing curtain." As a strange energy shot out from Yu Haoran's finger, the old man discovered to his horror that his life force was flowing out of his control. In the eyes of outsiders, the old man's silver hair was visibly turning white. In the blink of an eye, he had turned completely white. What was even more frightening was that the old man's originally robust body was rapidly aging at an unimaginable speed. Yu Haoran, that's enough. If you continue to use the law of flourishing curtain, that old man will die and your foundation will completely collapse. By the time the old man's sea of consciousness and dantian had shrunk to the point that he could no longer stand, the thaling that had fused into Yu Haoran's body hurriedly reminded him. Withdrawing his finger, the thaling instantly left Yu Haoran's body and returned to the jade bed on the top floor of the Victor Pavilion. After instantly losing his massive amount of soul energy, Yu Haoran was just like the old man, unable to stand on his own. Fortunately, the black bear had long since sensed that something was wrong with Yu Haoran and immediately supported him. How did you comprehend that kind of law? How did you control that kind of law? The old man asked in shock as he sat on the ground. Facing the old man's shocked question, Yu Haoran's heart was also in a state of shock. Actually, when he discovered that the old man had ignored the great Qin Empire's laws and directly snapped Zhang Yihai's neck, Yu Haoran knew that the old man was still a fugitive. No one could predict the actions of a fugitive. As such, in order to avoid being ambushed by the old man using the law of speed, Yu Haoran took the risk of using the possession technique that the Thaling had mentioned before. He allowed the Thaling's soul to forcefully fuse into his body. Through this, he possessed 1% of the Thaling's strength, which was the cultivation of a peak 7th stage martial saint. Perhaps it was because his cultivation and physical body's grade had increased rapidly recently, or perhaps it was because of the 1 Qi into 3 purities cultivation technique that allowed his 2 clones to simultaneously withstand the power of the possession technique. Chapter 709. There were still chapters 5 and 6 at night. Xianying City, in front of the northern city gate. A quasi-martial honor was a realm where one could completely control the power of laws. This was also the fundamental reason why the power of laws he had just displayed was completely different from that of the plain-clothed old man. However, when he had displayed the power of laws controlled by Thaling, he had not felt it too deeply. However, when he had seen the power of laws displayed, he had also been deeply shocked. Especially when he had seen the old man lose a large amount of his life force, instantly losing a lifespan that even a martial saint could not control. The shock in his heart had been like a raging wave. Thaling, what kind of power of laws do you control? Even though he had forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart, Yu Haoran's voice still trembled as he asked. Yu Haoran, don't worry about what kind of power of laws I control. Do you know that you're in big trouble? Thaling, who was sitting cross-legged on the jade bed on the top floor of the Victor, said with a gloomy expression. I know. Yu Haoran nodded and smiled bitterly. Originally, according to his agreement with Thaling, he had used the possession technique to possess his body and let Thaling control this body to deal with the plain-clothed old man who possessed the power of the law of speed. However, for some reason, Yu Haoran resisted this feeling of losing control. Therefore, when Thaling had just used the possession technique and his spirit body had merged with his body, he had used the consciousness of his spirit to forcefully expel Thaling's consciousness and regain control of his body. It was also because he did not understand Thaling's spirit body and was unfamiliar with the power of the martial saint and martial saint realms that he had not controlled the power of laws that he should have comprehended as a martial saint. He had forcefully used the power of laws controlled as a martial saint. In the end, it had caused a forceful backlash from controlling the power of laws, severely damaging the foundation that he had worked so hard to establish. Quickly deal with the matter at hand, then find a secluded place and think of a way to solve the problem in your body. Although he wanted to harshly criticize Yu Haoran after seeing his current miserable state, he ultimately softened his heart and reminded him. I got it. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran gestured for He Xiong to help him walk towards the old man. But at that moment, Qin Fengxiu suddenly appeared in front of the linen-clothed old man and smashed his head with a palm strike. Everyone has the right to punish those who offend their superiors and defy the authority of the emperor. After killing the plain-clothed old man, Qin Fengxiu pointed out righteously. Coldly glancing at Qin Fengxiu, Yu Haoran didn't say anything. He just signaled He Xiong to take him into Xianying City. However, he swore to himself that he would definitely destroy Qin Fengxiu and the vice minister's residence. Facing an expert who was able to turn a peak 7th grade martial saint into a powerless old man in an instant, the remaining few rich playboys obediently made way for Yu Haoran and watched him enter Xianying City. Lord Meng, what kind of secret technique was the prince consort's flourishing scene just now? How could its power be so terrifying? About 1,000 meters away from the northern city gate, 2 middle-aged scholars also watched Yu Haoran enter Xianying City with solemn expressions. The slightly younger middle-aged scholar asked with a trembling voice, Only martial saints can control the power of laws. After leaving behind an explanation, the middle-aged scholar called Lord Meng turned around and headed straight for the eastern city gate, his eyes full of regret. He planned to enter Xianying City through the eastern city gate. He Xiong, take me to the Clear Source Guild Hall immediately. Using the last trace of consciousness before fainting, Yuhaoran ordered. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Yuhaoran's consciousness was no longer willing to stay idle like this. Then, he forcibly broke through the shackles of darkness and slowly opened his eyes. Haoran, you're finally awake. Just as Yuhaoran opened his eyes, a familiar and warm voice entered his ears. Barely moving his eyes, Yuhaoran glanced at the person sitting beside him. He wanted to squeeze out a smile and greet him, but he discovered that he could not control his body at all. He could not even make a facial expression. Haoran, although I don't know if the secret technique you just used is as terrifying as the rumors say, your current situation is very bad. It would not be an exaggeration to say that you're a cripple. Seeing Yuhaoran look at him, Feng Qingyun complained with a pained heart. In response, Yuhaoran did not say anything. He closed his eyes again and wanted to use his divine sense to check his body, but he discovered that he could not use his divine sense. Helpless, he could only use the imprint in his sea of consciousness to contact Thaling. Thaling! You're awake. After hearing Yuhaoran's call, Thaling, whose complexion was not very good, appeared in his sea of consciousness. Thaling, are you okay? Sensing that Thaling's breath was too weak, Yuhaoran hurriedly asked with concern. Don't worry, I'm fine. Shaking his head, Thaling comforted him. Then, he said with a dignified expression. But your current situation is much worse than I expected. Thaling, I can't use my divine sense now, and I don't know the real situation of my body. Please help me check. Hearing that Thaling was fine, Yuhaoran secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and then motioned for him to check his own condition. I have good news and bad news, which one do you want to hear first? In fact, early on, when Yuhaoran was unconscious, Thaling had used his divine sense to carefully check his body, and knew the state of his body like the back of his hand. I'm a person who likes challenges, so let's hear the bad news first. Faced with the two choices given by Thaling, Yuhaoran made a choice jokingly. All the meridians are broken, the Dantian has basically collapsed, and the foundation has been destroyed. Perhaps because of Yuhaoran's relaxed attitude, Thaling, who was originally in a heavy mood, relaxed a lot. He also laughed and gave a result that would cause a normal warrior to collapse. Sigh. Hearing the results given by Thaling, Yuhaoran only sighed softly, and said in a tone that was not too dejected. It's about what I expected. Then, he continued to ask jokingly, then what's the good news? Because of the existence of Victor, your sea of consciousness did not suffer any damage, but your soul was overused, and is temporarily in a state of hibernation. Thaling replied with a smile. And this time, Thaling's smile came from the bottom of his heart. For a warrior, especially a martial arts great master who had opened his sea of consciousness and condensed his soul, the physical body was important, but the sea of consciousness and soul were even more important. Chapter 710. In the Knowledge Sea. Thank goodness, thank goodness! Hearing that his knowledge sea and spirit were fine, Yuhaoran heaved a sigh of relief and said, thank goodness twice. Yuhaoran, do you have any specific treatment methods for the following injuries? Ignoring Yuhaoran's relief, Thaling was now most concerned about how to help him recover as soon as possible. After all, time waits for no one. Because of his background, Yuhaoran was already far behind the other two people. Now was the critical time to catch up. He could not afford to waste too much time and opportunity because of his injuries. Otherwise, his and Yuhaoran's future would be very tragic. After hearing Thaling's reminder, Yuhaoran thought carefully for a while, and then gave a specific treatment plan. Thaling, for the recovery of my injuries, I want to start from 3 aspects. Go ahead. Thaling looked at Yuhaoran expectantly and signaled. The first step is to use the elixir to recover the greatly consumed spirit, and then use the spirit's power to dredge the broken meridians. Hearing Yuhaoran's first treatment plan, Thaling nodded in agreement. The second step is to merge with the second doppelganger and use the second doppelganger's dantian to repair the collapsed dantian. At this point, Yuhauran suddenly became silent. Go on. Using the second doppelganger's complete dantian to repair the collapsed dantian of the main body, Yuhauran's second treatment plan made Thaling very excited and wanted to know what the third treatment plan was. Thaling, using the second doppelganger to repair the collapsed dantian, is a very time-consuming process. Facing Thaling's questioning, Yuhauran thought for a while and then said in a pleading tone, "In 5 days, it will be my engagement ceremony with Ling Fei. I can't attend the ceremony with a nearly crippled body. Therefore, I need to use the victor's ability to accelerate time and try to repair the collapsed dantian within 4 days." After hearing Yuhauran's request, Thaling did not immediately give an answer. Instead, according to his own situation, he calculated the maximum time acceleration ratio that could be used by the victor. Yuhauran, in my current state, I can accelerate time for 2 years in the outside world for 1 day in the pagoda. I don't know if that can meet your requirements. After careful calculation, Thaling gave him the time acceleration ratio. That's great. Just now, he had asked for 4 days to repair his dantian. He had calculated it according to the time acceleration ratio when he first met the tower spirit. Now, after hearing that the victor's time acceleration ability had doubled, Yuhauran suddenly felt ecstatic and cheered. In response, Thaling only smiled and did not discuss with Yuhauran the treasures that needed to be exchanged for using the victor's time acceleration. After all, after such a long time together, he and Yuhauran were bound together for good and bad. How could he still be as cautious as before? Yuhauran, what about the third step of the treatment plan? After the dantian is completely recovered, I plan to refine the rank 4 third-grade Nirvana pill and use the power of Nirvana to restore the damaged foundation, Yuhauran said in a serious tone when he heard Thaling asking about the third step of the treatment plan. Could it be the Nirvana pill that is said to have the same effect as the Phoenix's Nirvana pill? Hearing that Yuhauran planned to refine the pill, Thaling stood up in shock and asked in disbelief. That's right. Nodding heavily, Yuhauran confirmed. Yuhauran, although the Nirvana pill does not need to withstand the lightning tribulation like the 5 Lives Mystical Gate pill and the Ice Heart Jade Bone pill, because it has the heaven-defying effect of Nirvana, the difficulty of refining it is more than 10 times that of the 5 Lives Mystical Gate pill and the Ice Heart Jade Bone pill. With your current alchemy grandmaster cultivation, it is impossible to refine it successfully. Thaling could not help but question Yuhauran's confirmation. I know. Facing Thaling's doubts, Yuhauran did not argue and nodded in agreement, but then he said in a determined tone, "But I have to take the risk to refine it, even if I fail in the end. Because this is the only way I can restore the damaged foundation." Facing Yuhauran's determination to cut off all means of retreat, Thaling did not continue to question anything, and then began to organize the materials needed to refine the Nirvana pill for him, but found that the most important material was missing. Yuhauran, if you want to refine the Nirvana pill, you need at least a drop of blood essence of an exotic beast that contains the bloodline of the divine beast Phoenix and has reached the peak of the 9th level of the 4th rank Sage realm. And we don't have the blood essence of such an exotic beast in our collection. Don't worry, the palace's treasury has it. Yuhauran replied confidently. Since he planned to refine the Nirvana pill, he had already calculated the main and auxiliary herbs needed to refine the Nirvana pill, and he also knew the source of the missing materials. Although the blood essence of a 4th rank Sage realm exotic beast that contains the bloodline of the divine beast Phoenix is very precious, with your relationship with Princess Ling Fei, I believe they will not refuse. Hearing that the Qin Kingdom's palace's treasury contained the bloodline of the divine beast Phoenix, Thaling subconsciously considered how to exchange for it. However, when he thought of the intimate relationship between Yuhauran and Qin Ling Fei, who were about to be engaged, he suddenly said with a smile, Then, he continued to organize the 80 kinds of auxiliary herbs needed to refine the nirvana pill, but found that he was missing 3 kinds of 4th-rank precious herbs. In the face of the missing 3 kinds of 4th-rank precious herbs, Yuhaoran's solution was still very simple, and that was to get them from the palace's treasury. In this regard, Thaling was deeply speechless, and he directly put the sorted auxiliary herbs into the victor, waiting for Yuhaoran to restore his dantian so that he could directly use them to refine the nirvana pill. Yuhaoran, since you have a reasonable arrangement on how to recover your injuries, then I will not continue to disturb you. You should hurry up and recover. Then, after telling Yuhaoran to hurry up and heal his injuries, he directly crushed a dozen top elixirs containing soul power to help Yuhaoran awaken his dormant divine soul. After that, he returned to the jade bed on the top floor of the victor and began to recover his divine soul body that had also suffered from the backlash of the power of law. After Thaling returned to the victor, Yuhaoran's consciousness did not immediately return to his body. It was not until the dormant divine soul woke up that his consciousness returned to his body. Master! The awakening of his divine soul meant that he had the ability to speak again. Seeing Feng Qingyun's anxious face and not knowing how to wake him up, Yuhaoran called out softly, "Haoran, are you okay?" Seeing Yuhaoran open his eyes again, Feng Qingyun hurriedly asked. Chapter 711. In the Qingya Pavilion. Haoran, don't lie to your master. Yuhaoran's reassurance didn't make Feng Qingyun feel at ease. He said with a dignified expression, "Just now I used my divine sense to carefully check the situation in your body. Not only are all your meridians broken, even your dantian has completely collapsed. Even your foundation may be affected to a certain extent." At this point, Feng Qingyun couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He didn't know what to say next. "Master, have you forgotten your disciple's true identity?" Knowing that his terrible situation made Feng Qingyun blame himself because he was helpless, Yuhaoran hurriedly persuaded with a smile. "Your disciple is a peak alchemy grandmaster. Haoran, could it be that you have a way to heal yourself?" After hearing Yuhaoran mention his true identity as the Emperor Qin's kingdom, Feng Qingyun immediately asked energetically, "I already have a preliminary treatment method, but I need an absolutely quiet environment to go into seclusion." Nodding, Yuhaoran deliberately reminded. After all, after fusing with the second doppelganger, he needed to immediately enter the victor, and then rely on the victor's ability to accelerate time to use 4 years to repair his dantian. Therefore, during these 2 days in the victor, he couldn't meet anyone, and he couldn't let anyone enter the room where he was in seclusion to avoid exposing the existence of the victor and Thaling. "Okay, I'll tell your senior and junior brothers not to disturb you for the time being." Feng Qingyun nodded in agreement to Yuhaoran's request, but at the same time, he thought of 2 people with special identities and hurriedly reminded him. "Haoran, when He Xiong brought you back to the Qingya Pavilion in the Qingyuan Guild Hall, the Emperor Qin and Princess Ling Fei had already come. They deliberately told me that when you woke up, I must inform them. So, before you go into seclusion to heal your wounds, I wonder if you can meet Emperor Qin and Princess Ling Fei." "Alright, then I'll have to trouble you to inform Emperor Qin and Ling Fei. It would take at least half a day to restore the Divine Soul and use the power of the Divine Soul to open up the broken meridians. Furthermore, before using Victor to repair his dantian, he also needed to meet with Emperor Qin and Ling Fei. Firstly, he wanted them to feel at ease and continue to prepare for the engagement ceremony. Secondly, Ling Fei had to prepare the blood essences of exotic beasts and the 3 types of 4th-grade spirit herbs needed to refine the nirvana pill. Thirdly, he needed Emperor Qin's guarantee that even if he used thunderous methods to destroy the assistant minister's manor, he would not be punished afterwards. "Alright, I'll inform them right away." After receiving Yuhaoran's reply, Feng Qingyun hurriedly left the room and instructed Chu Zhongyu and the others who were guarding the door. Zhongyu, your ninth junior brother needs an absolutely quiet environment to heal his wounds. Don't disturb him for the time being. Master, we promise that we won't speak. We just want to take a look at ninth junior brother and see how he is right now. Is that all right? Just as Feng Qingyun's order was given, fifth senior brother Huang Zonghua cautiously raised his request. No. Feng Qingyun decisively refused without even considering it. Master, how about we just take a look from the door? Just one look. Huang Zonghua begged bitterly. No. Feng Qingyun also refused without even considering it. Master, I'll only truly go into seclusion to heal after I meet with Emperor Qin and Ling Fei. Since I'm free now, please let eldest senior brother and the others in. His fifth senior brother, who would never refuse his master's orders, was begging while risking his master's anger. This was enough to show how worried his fellow disciples were about him. It was reasonable for him to see them before he went into seclusion to heal his wounds and warn them to be careful in Xianyang City. After all, he had offended many people during the Qin Alliance conference. Perhaps these people were afraid of his identity as the emperor's son-in-law and a Grandmaster Pill Master, so they did not dare to act against him. However, it was very likely that they would secretly retaliate against eldest senior brother and the others. Alright, but you can only stay for 3 minutes at most. Since Yu Haoran had already taken the initiative to ask, Feng Qingyun could not continue to refuse. He nodded in agreement and gave a time limit. Master, we understand. We promise to leave the room within 3 minutes. Eldest senior brother Chu Zhongyu patted his chest and promised. Ninth senior brother Chu Zhongyu and the others pushed open the door and entered the room. When they saw Yu Haoran's pale face and his weak aura that was even weaker than that of an ordinary person, their faces could not help but sink. Gongsun Yuding, who had the worst mental state cultivation and had always had special feelings for Yu Haoran, rushed to the bedside and tightly held Yu Haoran's hand as she cried and shouted. Yuding, don't cry. I'm really fine. Forcing out a smile, Yu Haoran comforted her with a smile. However, when he saw that his comforting did not make Gongsun Yuding stop crying, but instead made her even sadder, Yu Haoran could only use his trump card. Yuding, if you continue to cry, you will definitely become a big painted face. Then I will really see your ugliest side. Senior brother. Yu Haoran's joke made Gongsun Yuding immediately stop crying and quickly wipe away the tears on her face. However, when she saw the teasing smile in Yu Haoran's eyes, she immediately cried out in dissatisfaction. Seeing his eldest senior brother frown slightly, Gongsun Yiming hurriedly shouted to Gongsun Yuding, Yuding, come here. After Gongsun Yuding returned to Gongsun Yiming's side, Chu Zhongyu sat by the bed. However, he did not care about Yu Haoran's injuries. Instead, he directly asked who was the culprit behind Yu Haoran's injuries. Ninth junior brother, we are not familiar with the people in Xianyang City. We don't know anyone here, so we can't find out the cause of your injuries. So now, please tell me, your senior brother, who hurt you? Although Chu Zhongyu's tone was calm, Yu Haoran could clearly feel the strong murderous intent that he was trying to suppress. In this regard, how could Yu Haoran dare to tell him the truth? Eldest senior brother, it's not that I don't want to tell you who the culprit is. It's just that you don't have the cultivation and strength to avenge me. If you rashly seek revenge, I'm afraid that Master and I will have to collect your corpses and avenge you afterwards. Although telling the truth might hurt the eldest senior brother and the other's self-esteem, it was better to let them die. After all, Xianyang City was different from the 100 Qi Gate. In the 100 Qi Gate, a martial king could become a peak department elder, and a martial emperor was the strongest fighting force in the sect. However, in Xianyang City, where martial zones were as common as dogs, martial kings were everywhere, and even martial emperors could not shake. Chu Zhongyu and the others were like meat on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. I know. Chu Zhongyu nodded. He did not feel the slightest bit of dissatisfaction because Yu Haoran had told him the truth. He just wanted to know who the culprit was. Chapter 7:12. In Qingya Pavilion. Eldest senior brother, tell me the truth. Why are you so eager to know who the murderer is? Yu Haoran felt that something was wrong when he saw that Chu Zhongyu refused to give up the idea of asking who the murderer was. This was not in line with the personality of his eldest senior brother, so he could not help but question him. Facing Yu Haoran's question, Chu Zhongyu could not help but glance at Huang Zonghua. Fifth senior brother, you tell me. Yu Haoran's face darkened as he shouted. Yu Haoran noticed that Chu Zhongyu was subconsciously observing Huang Zonghua's actions. He knew that the person who really wanted to know the murderer was his fifth senior brother, Huang Zonghua. Thinking of his lively personality and his willingness to make friends, Yu Haoran was worried that he might have been deceived by some people in Xianyang City who were more cunning than a fox. Nothing. I just want to use the murderer's strength to motivate us to practice harder. Huang Zonghua evaded Chu Zhongyu's eyes and replied. How could Yu Haoran, who knew his character too well, believe him? Fifth senior brother, if you want everyone in Qingyan to die in Xianyang City, you can choose not to tell me. Moreover, you can leave now. Yu Haoran closed his eyes in disappointment. He did not want to see them at all. Ninth senior brother, it's actually a disciple from a big family in Xianyang City who is willing to help us. Gongsun Yuding could not bear to see Yu Haoran disappointed. She impulsively revealed the reason why Chu Zhongyu and Huang Zonghua were so eager to find out who the murderer was. Huang Zonghua could not help but glare at her angrily. Who is it? Yu Haoran suddenly opened his eyes and asked with a fierce expression. Although he had saved many people in Xianyang City with the antidote elixir, there were not many people who were truly grateful to him. Instead, he had offended many people because he had exchanged the antidote elixir for elixirs. Therefore, he did not believe that someone would risk offending the vice minister of the Ministry of Rites to help his fifth senior brother. That person has been in contact with fifth senior brother. I don't know his specific background either. Facing Yu Haoran's question, Gongsun Yuding hurriedly pointed at Huang Zonghua, as if she didn't know. Fifth senior brother. Looking at Huang Zonghua, Yu Haoran suppressed his anger and asked. Ninth junior brother, you just need to tell me who the murderer is and then recuperate in peace. As for the rest, you don't have to worry. Shaking his head, Huang Zonghua did not reveal who was supporting him. Instead, he continued to ask about the origin of the murderer. In response, Yu Haoran could not help but let out a long sigh as he spoke with a cold tone. Eldest senior brother, when master returns, I will ask him to arrange for you to leave Xianyang City and return to Qingyun Peak. Why? Chu Zhongyu's expression changed as he asked. This time, all the members of Qingyun's faction were present. Their purpose was to witness the engagement ceremony between Yu Haoran and Princess Ling Fei. Now, the engagement ceremony had not yet been held, and Yu Haoran wanted to drive them back to Qingyun Peak. How could Chu Zhongyu not ask clearly? Because I don't want my engagement ceremony to become a funeral for the destruction of Qingyun Peak. Yu Haoran replied rudely in response to Chu Zhongyu's question. Ninth junior brother, the disciple who is willing to help us is a kind person. Moreover, the elders of his family have been indebted to you and are willing to help us. Seeing that Yu Haoran's reason for driving them back to Qingyun Peak was still to find out who was willing to help them, Chu Zhongyu could only reveal a little about the person's character and the reason why he was willing to help. In response, Yu Haoran could not help but sneer. Eldest senior brother, do you know what I did in Xianyang City before the new year? Do you know how many noble families I offended in Xianyang City? Do you know how many disciples of noble families want to kill me because of my marriage with Princess Ling Fei? 3 questions in a row not only made Chu Zhongyu's expression change greatly, but also made Huang Zonghua realize that something was wrong. After looking at each other and getting a nod from Huang Zonghua, Chu Zhongyu finally revealed who was willing to help them. Ninth junior brother, the person who is willing to help us is Wang Yizhua from the Wang family in Xianyang City. It's him. After hearing that Chu Zhongyu revealed that Wang Yizhua was the one behind the scenes, Yu Haoran was shocked. Then, he revealed a puzzled expression. Ninth junior brother, what's wrong? Yu Haoran was surprised at first and then puzzled, which made Chu Zhongyu puzzled. Eldest senior brother, Wang Yizhua was originally one of the chosen heirs of the Wang family, but now he has lost his qualifications. Do you know why? Yu Haoran suppressed the puzzlement in his heart for the time being and asked with a sneer. Could it be because of you? Chu Zhongyu immediately guessed that the reason for Wang Yizhua's crippling was very likely related to his ninth junior brother, who was lying in bed. The reason why I was willing to let him live back then was to abolish his qualifications as a successor and expel him from Xianyang City. As Yu Haoran explained, the puzzlement that he had suppressed just now surged into his heart again. However, according to the agreement I made with the Wang family's ancestor, Wang Yizhua should have been expelled from Xianyang City more than half a month ago and then be punished in Qingyang City, the territory of the Wang family. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation and muttering to himself, both Chu Zhongyu and Huang Zonghua turned pale. For the children of big families, being deprived of their qualifications as heirs was similar to the hatred of killing one's father or stealing one's wife. Wang Yizhua's enthusiastic offer of help was probably just as Yu Haoran had said. He didn't really want to help them but intended to push them into the fire pit. After thinking about Wang Yizhua's truly sinister intentions, the second senior brother and the others all looked at Huang Zonghua suspiciously. This was because they had received Wang Yizhua and agreed to accept his help all because of Huang Zonghua's recommendation and persuasion. Otherwise, they wouldn't have easily believed the promise of a stranger. Ninth junior brother, I really didn't know that Wang Yizhua was such a person and didn't know about the deep hatred between you. Otherwise, how could I have accepted his help and brought him to see eldest senior brother and the others? Huang Zonghua, who was slightly flustered, hurriedly explained when he felt the questioning gazes of the second senior brother and the others. Fifth senior brother, I know you have good intentions and I also believe that you have been deceived by Wang Yizhua. Seeing the flustered Huang Zonghua, Yu Haoran knew his current mood and thoughts. He also knew that he was worried that his negligence and mistakes would cause his senior and junior brothers to alienate him and that he might not be able to continue to establish himself in Qinyun Peak in the future. Chapter 713. In the Qingya Pavilion. Not to mention you, even eldest senior brother and second senior brother were also deceived by Wang Yizhua. Alas! Faced with Yu Haoran's criticism, everyone except Gongsun Yuding could not help but sigh with self-blame. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, junior sister Gongsun. Yu Haoran looked at his brothers and Gongsun Yuding one by one and exhorted them with a serious expression. Unlike the simple-minded people in the sects who are always involved in the struggle for power, the people in Xianyang City are not easy to get along with, let alone the disciples of the family who are working for greater benefit. I asked my master to bring you to Xianyang City for 2 reasons. First, I want you to witness the big event in my life. Second, I hope you can broaden your horizons, increase your experience, and sharpen your minds through what you see and hear in Xianyang City. Yu Haoran stared at Chu Zhongyu and exhorted him. Eldest senior brother, from now on, I hope you can take second senior brother and the others out of the Qingyuan Guild Hall and take a look at the streets of Xianyang City. See how the ordinary people in Xianyang City survive and think about the reasons why they can establish themselves in Xianyang City. But you can't get involved in it. Ninth junior brother, I got it. Chu Zhongyu stood up from the bed and nodded his head heavily as he replied. Eldest senior brother, stay here. You guys go out first. Although Chu Zhongyu agreed without hesitation, Yu Haoran didn't have much hope that he would be able to learn how to survive by observing the lives of ordinary people. Fortunately, he already had an idea of how to train them. Knowing that he had something to tell eldest senior brother alone, second senior brother hurriedly asked the other junior brothers to leave the room. Yu Haoran looked at Chu Zhongyu, who was standing beside the bed with a face full of shame. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened his eyes. Eldest senior brother, after you return to Qingyun Peak after attending my engagement ceremony with Ling Fei, I hope you can spare half of your time to play a game of chess with the 100 Qi Gate as the chessboard and all the subordinate forces as the chess pieces. A game of chess that controls the life and death of millions of people. After hearing Yu Haoran's instructions and explanation, Chu Zhongyu completely forgot the shame in his heart and looked at him with a frightened expression. Ignoring Chu Zhongyu's fear, Yu Haoran continued. I have 2 goals for setting up this chess game. Firstly, I hope that you, as a chess player, can be reborn and truly possess the ability of a sect leader by personally controlling this chess game. Secondly, I hope that through this game of chess, Qingyun Peak can obtain a powerful capital in the future and also remove obstacles for the Emperor Qin's conquest of the world. 9th Junior Brother, the game you set up is too big, too complicated, too ruthless, and too vicious. I don't have the slightest confidence that I can play it without any mistakes. Although controlling the life and death of millions of people sounded very exciting and hot-blooded, Chu Zhongyu knew his own ability and character. He also knew that he could never complete Yu Haoran's instructions. Eldest senior brother, I will ask 3rd senior brother, 4th senior brother, 6th senior brother, 7th senior brother, and the Gongsun siblings to help you. Ignoring Chu Zhongyu's lack of confidence, Yu Haoran made a decision in an unquestionable tone and continued. Eldest senior brother, please ask 2nd senior brother to come in. Alas! Seeing that Yu Haoran had made up his mind and did not allow him to object, Chu Zhongyu could only sigh and then walked out of the room with a heavy face. 9th junior brother, are you looking for me? Lu Guangwei, who entered the room after him, asked with concern. 2nd senior brother, after attending the engagement ceremony of Ling Fei and I, don't go back to Qingyun Peak with Master for the time being. I want to take you to a place. Compared to Chu Zhongyu's serious attitude, Yu Haoran's attitude towards Lu Guangwei was very gentle. Where are we going? Yu Haoran deliberately asked Lu Guangwei to go with a seriously injured body. Lu Guangwei immediately became very interested in the place they were going to. A place that can satisfy your wishes, Yu Haoran replied with a smile. After that, he withdrew his smile and instructed. 2nd senior brother, please ask 8th senior brother and Jingjun to come in. Okay. Yu Haoran's half-hearted way of telling Lu Guangwei about the place that could satisfy his wishes made Lu Guangwei feel quite depressed and speechless. However, seeing that Yu Haoran was unwilling to say more, he could only get up and leave the room. 8th senior brother, Jingjun, after attending the engagement ceremony of Ling Fei and I will arrange for the 2 of you to join the army of Emperor Qin's northern expedition. I hope that the 2 of you can quickly improve your cultivation and strength through cruel battles and killings. Yu Haoran gave a brief order to Lin Xian and Wu Jingjun, who had just entered the room. Then he simply ignored their opinions and signaled for them to leave the room. Looking at the closed door, Yu Haoran could not help but sigh. Originally, he wanted to wait until his engagement ceremony was over before telling them about his arrangement. However, 5th senior brother was too trusting of others' actions and had almost caused the destruction of the sect. Therefore, he had to make arrangements in advance. Moreover, using the sect as the chessboard and using the affiliated forces of the sect as the chess pieces to control the life and death of millions of people, he originally only wanted eldest senior brother and 3rd senior brother to be in charge. However, when he saw that they, as bystanders at the beginning, did not recognize Wang Yizhua's sinister intentions, He realized that his idea was too simple and his understanding of his senior brothers was too shallow. Therefore, he decided to let 4th senior brother, 5th senior brother, 6th senior brother, 7th senior brother and Gong's son Yiming assist them in expanding their experience and sharpening their simple characters. After exhaling the turbid qi accumulated in his chest, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and began to connect his broken meridians with the help of his recovered divine soul. However, reality did not give him too much time to connect his broken meridians quietly. Just as he was connecting the broken meridians in his arms, the door was suddenly pushed open, and then a familiar fragrance of a young girl came to his nose. Seeing Qin Lingfei's tearful face, Yu Haoran greeted her with a chuckle. Ling Fei. Haoran. Although it had not been long since they left Qingya Pavilion, Qin Lingfei's heart ached when she saw Yu Haoran's miserable look. She could not help crying. Silly girl, don't cry. I'm really fine. Yu Haoran raised his left hand, which had just connected and opened his meridians, and stroked her hair to comfort her. Chapter 7:14. In Qingya Pavilion. Ling Fei, if I, Yu Haoran, become an ordinary person who can't even truss a chicken, are you still willing to be engaged to me, grow old with me, and hold my hand until we grow old together? Facing Qin Lingfei's nervous look, Yu Haoran was tempted and couldn't help but want to test her. He wanted to see if the woman in front of him could really make him completely freeze the door of love. Yu Haoran, what do you mean by what you said just now? After hearing Yu Haoran's question, Qin Lingfei, who was originally nervous, suddenly pulled a long face and asked angrily. Do you think that I, Qin Lingfei, am a superficial woman who only cares about appearance? Or do you think that I, Qin Lingfei, like you because of your extraordinary talent? Seeing that his test just now really angered Qin Lingfei, Yu Haoran hurriedly apologized. Lingfei, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Yu Haoran, you've made my heart ache and I'm very disappointed. Yu Haoran took the initiative to apologize, which meant that he was sure that she had an ulterior motive for liking him. This made Qin Lingfei very angry and sad. With tears in her eyes again, she stood up directly and wanted to leave the room. That made her sad and disappointed. However, Yu Haoran, who had sensed that something was wrong, hurriedly held her hand and pulled her in front of him forcibly. There was a trace of sadness in his voice. Ling Fei, before you decide to leave, can you listen to me first? A story that happened to me. Go ahead. Qin Lingfei said with a straight face. She wanted to leave, but she was reluctant to leave. Otherwise, Yu Haoran, who was seriously injured, could not hold her back. 1.5 months ago, a family affiliated to the 100 Qi Gate was suddenly massacred. After that, Yu Haoran told Qin Lingfei about how he and Hiryu met, fell in love, and how they broke up. He even told Qin Lingfei about his intention to freeze their relationship because of Hiryu's betrayal. After she finished talking about her first relationship after her rebirth, Yu Haoran took the initiative to let go of Qin Lingfei's hand, letting her go as she pleased. Haoran, don't worry. No matter what happens in the future, I won't leave you, nor will I betray you. Feeling Yu Haoran take the initiative to let go, Qin Lingfei, who felt sorry for him, immediately held onto him again. She leaned her head on his chest and promised gently. Ling Fei. Stroking Qin Lingfei's hair with his right hand, Yu Haoran took the initiative to open the door to their relationship and called out passionately. By the way, Haoran, you haven't answered me yet. Are you completely useless? Feeling Yu Haoran's gradually accelerating heartbeat and the strong aura emitting from his body, Qin Lingfei, who had never felt like this before, was a little flustered. She even had a slight impulse in her heart. However, when she thought of the strict etiquette of the imperial family, she quickly adjusted her state of mind and sat up straight. Did your father say that? Yu Haoran asked unhappily. Since he was brought back to Qingya Pavilion by He Xiong, he was protected by a master who comprehended the special power of law. Other than Qin Lingfei, perhaps only Emperor Qin could come into contact with him. Furthermore, with Emperor Qin's quasi-martial honor-level cultivation, he would be able to determine his true condition just based on his aura. However, what made Yu Haoran very unhappy was that after knowing his true condition, he did not hurry to think of a way to save him. Instead, he told Qin Lingfei about his injuries. Could it be that he was the one who truly regretted it? He. Faced with Yu Haoran's unhappy questioning, Qin Lingfei did not know how to answer. She could only laugh dryly. Humph. Qin Lingfei's dry laugh let Yu Haoran know that his guess was right. Furthermore, he knew even more clearly that Emperor Qin must have persuaded Qin Lingfei to reconsider whether he was suitable. Therefore, his original intention of giving the Icy Heart Jade Bone Pill to Emperor Qin through the betrothal gift changed. He wanted to extort a huge sum from Emperor Qin to vent the hatred in his heart. Ling Fei, give me 4 days. Give me 4 days and you'll see a lively Yu Haoran appear in front of you again, Yu Haoran promised as he held Qin Lingfei's jade-like hand tightly. I believe in you. Qin Lingfei nodded and looked gently at Yu Haoran. Oh right. Thinking of the mutant beast's blood essence, and the 3 4th-grade spiritual herbs that he urgently needed to refine the Nirvana pill, Yu Haoran quickly used his will to take out a blank jade slip from his storage ring. He wrote down the mutant beast's blood essence, and the spiritual herbs he needed on the jade slip and handed it to Qin Lingfei. Ling Fei, if I want to completely recover and regain my monstrous talent, I need to refine a special pill. However, I'm currently lacking a few ingredients for refining the pill, so I hope you can find these ingredients from the palace's treasury. Qin Lingfei took the jade slip from Yu Haoran's hand and glanced at the mutant beast's blood essence and spiritual herbs recorded on it. Haoran, there's no need to go to the palace's treasury. I have the mutant beast's blood essence and spiritual herbs recorded on the jade slip. Afterwards, she took out a pill bottle and 3 jade boxes from her storage ring. She picked up the pill bottle and opened it. A scorching aura that instantly raised the temperature of the room by more than 20 degrees radiated from the pill bottle. The blood essence of a rank 3 exalted realm, 1st rank flamingo. The sudden increase in temperature and the energy fluctuations in the blood essence immediately alerted Thaling, who was healing himself in the victor. Thaling couldn't help but cry out in surprise when he scanned the mutant beast's blood essence in the pill bottle with his divine sense. There were 2 ways to increase the success rate of refining the Nirvana pill. The first way was to rely on the alchemist's own alchemy skills. Given Yu Haoran's current state, it was impossible for him to improve his alchemy skills in a short period of time. The second way was to use the mutant beast's blood essence as the main ingredient. The higher the mutant beast's blood essence's grade, the greater the success rate of refining the pill. Originally, Thaling didn't have much hope of successfully refining the Nirvana pill because of Yu Haoran's alchemy skills. However, when he saw that the mutant beast's blood essence that Qin Lingfei took out was actually a rank 3 exalted realm 1st rank, a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. Ling Fei, thank you. Ignoring the surprised pagoda genie, Yu Haoran put the lid back on the pill bottle. He supported her shoulders and let her climb onto his chest again as he thanked her emotionally. Haoran, this is what I should do, Qin Lingfei replied softly while feeling shy in the face of Yu Haoran's passionate actions. Cough! Just as Yu Haoran and Qin Lingfei were enjoying the peace of their own world, a soft cough suddenly sounded from outside the door. Chapter 7:15. In Qingya Pavilion. Ling Fei, you can go back first. Looking at the blushing Qin Lingfei, Yu Haoran said dotingly. When our engagement ceremony comes, I will give you a surprise that you will never forget. Okay. Nodding slightly, Qin Lingfei left the room reluctantly. She was reluctant to leave Yu Haoran. Cough. Seeing that Qin Lingfei still hadn't come out, a soft cough came from outside the door. It meant that the person outside the door was getting impatient. However, after hearing the familiar cough twice and thinking about the misunderstanding of him and Ling Fei almost breaking up, Yu Haoran's heart was suddenly filled with anger. He ordered Qin Ling Fei with an unhappy expression. Ling Fei, please help me pass a message to someone when you go out. Just say that I, Yu Haoran, am seriously injured and not far from death. In order to prevent the bad luck of a dying person like me from affecting his destiny, I won't invite him in for the time being. Haoran. Hearing Yu Haoran's sarcastic words, Qin Ling Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That's my father. Also, help me pass a message to him. Although the icy heart jade bone pill has been successfully refined, I will leave it as a legacy to my fiancé. Seeing Qin Ling Fei's dissatisfied reminder, although Yu Haoran didn't continue to mock and ridicule, his anger couldn't be quelled. He still didn't intend to let Emperor Qin have an easy time and began to arrange the ownership of the icy heart jade bone pill. Yu Haoran didn't lower his voice when he mocked and ridiculed, so Emperor Qin, who was standing outside the door, heard it clearly. Especially when Feng Qinyun was beside him, it made him feel very awkward. However, he didn't get angry because of it. After all, he was the one in the wrong. He had taken the initiative to persuade his daughter to abandon Yu Haoran. It was understandable that Yu Haoran would complain about him. However, when he heard that the icy heart jade bone pill had already been successfully refined, and the result was that it wasn't given to him, he immediately became anxious. He had already passed the soul tribulation and heart tribulation. As long as he used the icy heart jade bone pill to pass the body tribulation, he would be able to reach the martial revered realm soon. Although he was anxious, Emperor Qin did not dare to directly push open the door and barge in. If he angered Yu Haoran, he really would not have any hope of obtaining the ice heart jade bone pill. After all, he had seen Yu Haoran's vengeful personality more than once. Haoran, what are you talking about? When she heard Yu Haoran mention the relics, Qin Ling Fei suddenly felt flustered and immediately stopped him angrily. Ling Fei, you go back first. After a series of mocking and ridiculing and threats, Yu Haoran slightly calmed the anger in his heart. He then smiled and indicated to Qin Ling Fei. Then what about my imperial father? Pointing at Emperor Qin outside the door, Qin Ling Fei asked in a low voice. Let him bask in the sun. I won't see him for the time being. Yu Haoran also replied in a low voice. Then, he closed his eyes and ignored the dissatisfaction in Qin Ling Fei's eyes, as if he was going to heal his injuries. Seeing that Yu Haoran was still unwilling to forgive her imperial father and had closed his eyes to heal his injuries, Qin Ling Fei couldn't help but shake her head with a bitter smile. Then, she pushed open the door and walked out. Fei-er. Seeing Qin Ling Fei walk out of the room and quickly close the door, Emperor Qin no longer had his usual majesty. He looked at Qin Ling Fei cautiously and expectantly. Ignoring her imperial father's expectant eyes, Qin Ling Fei respectfully said to Feng Qinyun, Master, according to the imperial etiquette of my great Emperor Qin kingdom, it is not appropriate for me to leave the palace before the engagement. Therefore, I will not be able to come here to visit Haoran for the next few days. I will have to trouble you to take care of Haoran for me. Princess Ling Fei does not need to worry. Haoran is my most valued disciple. Of course, I will not let him suffer any harm. Feng Qinyun promised with a smile. Then, he directly turned and left and returned to his room, leaving Emperor Qin and Qin Ling Fei some space to talk. Imperial Father, let's return to the palace. Qin Ling Fei didn't intend to take advantage of Feng Qinyun's good intentions and directly asked to return to the palace. Fei-er, does Haoran really not intend to see me? Emperor Qin, who was concerned about whether or not he could pass the body tribulation, asked carefully like a doting father. Imperial Father, don't you understand Haoran's true meaning? Qin Ling Fei couldn't help but remind him when she saw that her father, who was usually so awe-inspiring, had completely lost his usual shrewdness because of the ownership of the Icy Heart Jade Bone Elixir. She was disappointed and couldn't help but remind him. Howren's true meaning? After hearing Qin Lingfei's reminder, Emperor Qin carefully recalled the contents of the conversation between the two that he had just eavesdropped on. Finally, he noticed Yu Howren's last sentence. I will leave it to my fiancée as a relic. Who was Yu Howren's fiancée? Wasn't it his daughter, Princess Ling Fei? With Ling Fei's respect for him, wouldn't she take the initiative to give him the Icy Heart Jade Bone Elixir? However, there was a premise to all of this, and that was the meaning of the relic. What was a relic? It was something left behind by someone who was bound to die. In fact, it wasn't that Yu Howren didn't intend to give the Icy Heart Jade Bone Elixir to him. He was just complaining that he was too selfish, or more accurately, he needed to compensate him enough to appease his anger. Thinking of this, Emperor Qin's original imposing manner returned to him. He raised his head and shouted outside the courtyard of Qingya Pavilion. Director Jiang! Your Majesty! Director Jiang quickly opened the courtyard door and appeared in front of Emperor Qin in a flash, respectfully waiting for instructions. Mobilize all the spies and investigate the evidence of Qin Zhichang, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights, breaking the law. Emperor Qin ordered. Yes, Your Majesty. Looking at Director Jiang, who respectfully turned to leave Qingya Pavilion, Emperor Qin turned to look at the room where Yu Howren was recuperating, then said to Qin Lingfei. Fei accompany Imperial Father back to the palace. Yes, Imperial Father. Seeing that her Imperial Father had regained his confidence, Qin Lingfei happily replied. Your Majesty, other than investigating the crimes of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights, you also need to prepare a few treasures that can move me. Otherwise, the final betrothal gift of the engagement ceremony won't be the Icy Heart Jade Bone Elixir. Just as Emperor Qin was about to leave Qingya Pavilion with Qin Lingfei, Yu Howren's conditions for reconciliation came from the room. Howren, don't worry. I will prepare a gift that is beyond your imagination. Without turning his head back, the Qin Emperor gave the first promise he was willing to make since he ascended the throne. After sensing that Emperor Qin and Qin Lingfei had left Qingya Pavilion, Yu Howren ordered Thaling to set up a double array of security and defense in the room. After that, his physical body entered the Thaling Palace. Chapter 7:16. There was a sixth chapter tonight. In Xianyang City, as the day of the engagement between Princess Ling Fei and the 100 Qi Gate's Deputy Gate Master Yu Howren drew closer, the entire Xianyang City fell into a carnival that was even livelier than the New Year. However, the atmosphere in the mansions of the several aristocratic families in Xianyang City was very oppressive. Among them were the Meng family, the Wang family, and the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights. Qin Zhichang, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights, who had just returned from the imperial court, had a gloomy face. Master! Seeing that Qin Zhichang was in a bad mood, Chief Steward Yuan cautiously greeted him. Go and call Chu. Qin Zhichang ordered as he walked toward the study, suppressing his anger. Yes, Master. In addition to the burning anger, Chief Steward Yuan, who was familiar with Qin Zhichang, could feel the endless killing intent in his body. This made him realize that Qin Zhichang was in trouble. Therefore, Chief Steward Yuan did not delay and directly used a movement technique to call for Qin Fengxiu. Not long after, Qin Fengxiu arrived at the study. When he saw his father sitting in the armchair with a gloomy expression, Qin Fengxiu, who was originally in a good mood, suddenly became nervous. Father, why did you call Chu here? Qin Fengxiu asked nervously. Chu, what are the Confucian school's 3 steel and 5 constant? Qin Zhichang raised his head and looked at Qin Fengxiu, who looked 90% similar to him, with a painful expression in his eyes. Then, he took a deep breath and suppressed the sadness and pain in his heart. he asked as if he was teaching Qin Fengxiu knowledge. Father, the three steel refers to the ruler as the subject, the father as the son, and the husband as the wife. The five constant are still benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faith. Although he did not understand why his father asked him why he had started learning the spring and autumn dew when he was 3 years old, he was used to listening to his father's orders and obediently answered. Chu the father as the son, what does it mean? Qin Jichang did not express any opinion about Qin Fengxiu's answer. He only picked one of the 3 principles and continued to ask. Father as the son is the foundation of the 3 principles. It refers to the children's absolute obedience to their parent. When Qin Fengxiu explained the meaning of the father is the son, a bad feeling gradually emerged in his heart. Chu will you obey the absolute obedience of the 3 principles of conduct? Qin Jichang nodded with satisfaction at Qin Fengxiu's answer. Then, he raised his head and looked at Qin Fengxiu with a trace of determination in his eyes. Father, what do you mean? When Qin Fengxiu saw the determination in his father's eyes and associated it with the absolute obedience of a father as a son, Qin Fengxiu had already guessed his father's true thoughts. But when he thought about how he was his only son and the only successor to the Ministry of Rights, he was unwilling to believe his own guesses and couldn't help but ask. What exactly do I mean? Smart as you are, you should have already guessed it. In the face of Qin Fengxiu's questioning, Qin Jichang suddenly sat up straight and asked in a cold voice. Why? Qin Fengxiu asked, unable to understand and accept. Why? Repeating Qin Fengxiu's question, Qin Jichang closed his eyes and suddenly fell silent. Father, is it because of Yu Haoren? Seeing his father suddenly fall silent, Qin Fengxiu tried to ask. Qin Jichang nodded with his eyes closed. Father, if it's because of Yu Haoren, you don't need to worry at all. After receiving his father's confirmation, the nervous Qin Fengxiu immediately relaxed and spoke with a tone full of confidence. Because I handled things very well at the time and didn't leave behind any evidence that could be traced back to the assistant minister estate. Qin Jichang opened his eyes and looked at his son, who had regained his confidence, and couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. Then, he asked, Chu if His Majesty wants to move against the assistant minister estate because of Yu Haoren, does he need evidence? Lord Father, my Grand Qin Empire was founded on martial might and rules the country by law. Could it be that His Majesty dares to take the risk of offending all the civil and military officials and forcefully convict my assistant minister estate without sufficient evidence? Qin Fengxiu retorted like a pure Confucian scholar when faced with his father's question. Seeing his son, who was as simple as an idiot, Qin Jichang felt a deep sense of self-reproach. He blamed himself for sending his son to a Confucian school to study the way of elegance, and even more so for having his son walk the path of a civil official with him. He was too simple, so simple that he couldn't adapt to this cruel world. This was also good. At least if he used his son's life to protect the assistant minister estate, he wouldn't feel disappointed or sad. Steward Yuan. Qin Jichang suddenly shouted at Steward Yuan, who was standing guard outside the study. Master. After hearing the greeting, Chief Steward Yuan entered the study room cautiously. Send Chu to the Court of Judicial Review and personally hand him over to Jiang Shaoqing. Also, tell him that the mastermind behind the ambush of the son-in-law in the northern city is Qin Fengxiu. Qin Jichang ordered coldly as he leaned back in his armchair. Father, you can't do this to me. I arranged for Uncle Li to kill the black bear beside Yu Haoren because I wanted to avenge you. It was Uncle Li's idea that Yu Haoren was heavily injured. I didn't do anything wrong, nor am I guilty. It wasn't the Ministry of Justice, but the Court of Judicial Review. His father's action just now was very clear. He planned to sacrifice himself to protect the family. However, how could Qin Fengxiu, who believed that he didn't do anything wrong, or rather, who didn't want to accept his fate, obediently obey. Therefore, as he argued loudly, he tried to mobilize the soul power and origin power of a peak 7th-grade martial king, intending to forcefully break out. However, when he realized that he couldn't mobilize his soul power and origin power, his expression couldn't help but change. His voice was filled with anger. You actually poisoned me! Steward Yuan, hurry up! Ignoring Qin Fengxiu's question, Qin Jichang ordered Steward Yuan. Yes, master. Steward Yuan directly knocked Qin Fengxiu unconscious and directly carried him out of the study, heading straight for the Court of Judicial Review in the inner city. 1 day in the outside world was 2 years in the pagoda. 2 days in the outside world was 4 years in the pagoda. Ever since his rebirth, Yu Haoran had never spent such a long time on cultivation and healing. Fortunately, his strong mental state cultivation allowed him to adjust and calm down in time every time he was upset and irritable. It was under this kind of persistent cultivation and healing that his dantian, which originally needed about 4 years to be repaired, was completely repaired in the 3rd year. Chapter 717. Begging for flowers, begging for gifts, begging for subscriptions. In the Qingya Pavilion, after 3 years of healing and 2 months of pill cultivation, Yu Haoran finally decided to leave the victor and return to the real world. After saying goodbye to Thaling, he touched the imprint in his mind and returned to the room in the Qingya Pavilion. Taking a deep breath of the fresh air of the outside world, a familiar and intimate feeling swept away the frustration that had accumulated in his heart due to the long period of cultivation. Then, he sat cross-legged on the bed and began to adjust the aura that was different from the Tianxian continent due to the long period of cultivation in the victor. Fortunately, he did not stay in the victor for too long, so the aura that was different from the Tianxian continent was not strong. It only took him 10 minutes to recover to his original state. Getting out of bed, Yu Haoran planned to start refining the nirvana pill to recover his completely collapsed foundation as soon as possible. He signaled Thaling to remove the double defensive and alert formations in the room and then opened the door. Just as he was about to leave the room, he found his master sitting cross-legged in front of the door. From the yellow leaves and dust that fell around him as he sat cross-legged, Yu Haoran knew that during the 2 days he was recuperating, his master had been guarding the front of the room and had not taken a single step out. This made him feel a trace of warmth in his heart. Haoran, you've recovered. Hearing the door open behind him, Feng Qinyun, who had been on high alert, immediately opened his eyes and turned his head to look. Seeing Yu Haoran in good spirits, he quickly asked in surprise. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran suppressed the gratitude in his heart and replied in a relaxed tone, Master, this disciple's injuries have already completely healed. Next, I will need to refine a type of medicinal pill to replenish my overdrawn foundation. That's good. It was just that his overdrawn foundation had not recovered yet. After hearing Yu Haoran's white lie, Feng Qinyun could not help but sigh in relief. After all, the Tianxian continent had too many treasures that could recover one's overdrawn potential. Moreover, Yu Haoran himself was a grandmaster at the pinnacle of pill cultivation. It was very easy for him to recover his overdrawn potential. Master, although you must be very tired after guarding me for so many days, your disciple still needs you to guard me and refine the pill. He wanted to let his master rest, but after considering that the nirvana pill would not be baptized by lightning tribulations, the commotion caused by the formation of the pill would not lose to the 5 lives mystical gate pill and the ice heart jade bone pill. At that time, there might be some greedy people who would come to fight for the nirvana pill. Therefore, he needed his master and Black Bear, 2 experts in the martial saint realm, to protect him so that he could concentrate on refining the nirvana pill. He didn't have much confidence in refining it, and he didn't even know if he could successfully refine it. Facing Yu Haoran's request, Feng Qingyun waved his hand and said in an unhappy tone, "Haoran, what are you talking about? What I should say is that helping you refine pills is my honor." Master for me." After saying politely, Yu Haoran came to the place where he had refined the 5 lives mysterious pill. He took out the elixir furnace that had been upgraded 3 times. It had been restored to the highest grade of the King realm. Then, he sat down cross-legged and took out the elixirs that Thaling had sorted out from the victor. He also summoned his second doppelganger to help at any time. Then, he closed his eyes and carefully recalled the formula of the Nirvana pill, as well as the whole process of melting and refining the elixirs. He tried to be foolproof. Just as Yu Haoran began the preparations for refining the pill, Chu Zhongyu and the others, who had gone out to observe the survival of the ordinary people in Xianyang City, returned to the Qingya Pavilion, chatting and laughing. When they saw Yu Haoran sitting cross-legged in front of the elixir furnace, Chu Zhongyu and the others habitually wanted to greet him. Feng Qingfeng immediately glared and quickly reminded him with his divine thought. Haoran plans to refine a high-quality pill. He needs an absolutely quiet environment. Now, you can either stay here quietly and don't disturb him, or continue to observe the survival of the ordinary people. They had always heard that 9th junior brother's alchemy skills were very powerful and his alchemy skills were miraculous, but they had never seen it with their own eyes. Therefore, after hearing Feng Qingyun's reminder, Chu Zhongyu and the others quickly stood behind him and looked at Yu Haoran while biting their lip. When everything was ready, Yu Haoran opened his eyes and pressed his right hand on the elixir furnace. Then, he mobilized his origin energy to drive the fire in the furnace. One by one, the elixirs were thrown into the furnace. They were quickly melted and refined into pure elixirs. When all 80 auxiliary elixirs were refined into elixirs, Yu Haoran suddenly stopped refining the elixirs. Then, he looked at the last elixir, which was the blood essence of the first grade of the rank 3 Exalted Realm Fiery Bird. The Nirvana pill was meant to break everything and start all over again. It was a heaven-defying elixir created in ancient times by alchemists who had reached the pill god realm based on the phoenix's ability to rise from the ashes. Although the Nirvana pill's recipe had been modified by countless alchemists and the difficulty of refining it had been reduced by a lot, the only thing that hadn't changed and couldn't be changed was how to refine and fuse the blood essence of the phoenix. This was the problem that countless alchemy grandmasters were unable to successfully refine the Nirvana pill. At the same time, it was also the main reason why Yu Haoran lacked confidence. He took a deep breath and dispelled the messy thoughts that had just emerged in his mind. Then, he directly opened the lid of the elixir bottle. Then, an incomparably hot aura instantly raised the temperature of the entire Qingya Pavilion by more than 10 degrees. The scorching aura even began to affect the entire Qingyuan Guild Hall. This is the aura of an exalted realm beast. Feeling the scorching aura from the elixir bottle, Feng Qingyun couldn't help but take 2 steps back and muttered to himself with a pale expression. Gently pulling Feng Qingyun's sleeve, Gongsun Yuding signaled for him to be quiet. Taking a deep breath and forcibly suppressing the shock in his heart, Feng Qingyun nodded to Gongsun Yuding and signaled for everyone to step back. Then, he looked at Yu Haoran with a grave expression. He couldn't help but guess what kind of heaven-defying elixir Yu Haoran planned to refine after using the blood essence of a rank 3 Exalted Realm beast. Reaching out to pick up the elixir bottle, Yu Haoran directly poured the blood essence of the flamingo into the cauldron without the slightest hesitation. As soon as the blood essence of the flamingo entered the cauldron, the flames contained in the blood essence and the cauldron's fire seemed to be mortal enemies. They were completely out of his control and directly confronted each other. Yu Haoran, who had already expected this, didn't panic in the slightest. First, he used his divine sense to drive the spirit liquid refined from the 80 spirit herbs to the edge of the cauldron to avoid being destroyed by the 2 different flames. Chapter 7:18. In the Qingya Pavilion. After receiving Yu Haoran's elemental energy, the alchemy fire in the furnace seemed to have a life of its own and directly transformed into a faint shadow. As the person who directly provided elemental energy, Yu Haoran could feel that the shadow formed by the alchemy fire was the original owner of the alchemy furnace, Saint Elixir Wondrous Venerable. Seeing that the power of the opponent's phantom image had suddenly increased, the blazing fire in the flamingo's blood essence was not to be outdone. It also transformed into a divine beast phoenix with a noble and pure demeanor, its entire body exuding a majestic blaze. Purring! Seeing that the remnant consciousness of the flamingo's blood essence had unexpectedly transformed into a divine beast phoenix, Saint Elixir Wondrous Venerable acted as if it had been provoked. After a light shout, he faintly formed a seal with his 10 fingers, and a giant square seal appeared above the divine beast phoenix's head. Clang! Seeing the square seal quickly exploding above its head, the divine beast phoenix let out a long cry and then flapped its wings to meet the square seal. Boom! Although they were limited by the alchemy furnace and Feng Qingyun and the others were unable to see the two flames tearing each other apart, when the two flames collided for the first time, the roar formed not only caused Feng Qingyun's expression to change, but also caused Chu Zhongyu and the others to be instantly affected. Gongsun Yuding, who had the lowest cultivation, had a line of blood flowing out of her 5 orifices. Fortunately, Feng Qingyun, who had already sensed Gongsun Yuding's situation, helped her block the aftermath of the roar in time and used his gentle soul power to help her recover. Ting-er, how about Master send you out of the Qingya Pavilion? Seeing that there was a trace of panic on Gongsun Yuding's face, Feng Qingyun suggested with concern. Shaking her head vigorously, Gongsun Yuding stared at Yu Haoran with an attitude that said she would never leave. In response, Feng Qingyun could only sigh lightly. Then, he used his soul power and origin energy to create a defensive barrier around her body to prevent her from being hit again. When the two flames clashed for the first time, even Feng Qingyun, a martial saint expert who had comprehended a special power of law, had to bear some of the impact. As for the experts in Xianyang City with higher cultivations and stronger strength, they also felt the power fluctuations coming from the Qingya Pavilion. In the palace, Emperor Qin, who had just finished making arrangements for the army and the engagement ceremony, wanted to take a breather and rest. However, the sudden energy fluctuation in Xianyang City made his expression change. The powerful divine sense of a second tribulation quasi-martial venerable followed the traces left behind by the energy fluctuations and instantly tracked them to the Qingya Pavilion. When he saw Yu Haoran with his hands on the pill furnace and his face slightly flushed, Emperor Qin couldn't help but bitterly laugh. Unlike other alchemy grandmasters and alchemy grandmasters, other alchemy grandmasters and alchemy grandmasters might not be able to refine such a sensational top alchemy pill within 100 years. But what about Yu Haoran? Instead, he treated top alchemy pills or alchemy pills with heaven-defying effects as ordinary alchemy pills and would refine them every few days. Of course, this was also because Yu Haoran's alchemy skills were strong enough and he was confident in his alchemy technique. Otherwise, if he failed to refine alchemy pills, not only would he waste a lot of precious elixirs, but the rumors after failure would also have a certain impact on his alchemy heart. In an ordinary courtyard in the backyard of the Meng clan, on the surface of a man-made lake, a burly middle-aged man of about 40 years old sat cross-legged on the lake, motionless. However, when a weak energy fluctuation came from Xianyang City, the middle-aged man couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't open his eyes, his enormous divine sense, which was like a star, instantly tracked to the Qingya Pavilion. When he saw that the person who had caused the energy fluctuation was Yu Haoran, who had refined the 5 Lives Mysterious Gate pill, the middle-aged man immediately became very interested in the alchemy pill he was refining. Then, his divine sense condensed into a shadow and hid in the void like Emperor Qin. Emperor Qin, who was also hiding in the void, glanced coldly at the middle-aged man, then turned his attention back to Yu Haoran and ignored him. The middle-aged man also ignored Emperor Qin. After sensing the energy fluctuation, the top powerhouses of the Gu clan, Wang family, Prince Mansion, and other aristocratic families in Xianying City used their divine sense to condense a shadow and hid in the void to observe Yu Haoran, who was refining the alchemy pill. Although the power of the alchemy furnace's alchemy fire had increased several times with the support of Yu Haoran's origin energy, the fiery bird's blood essence that had transformed into the divine beast phoenix was a terrifying existence of the third stage exalted realm. Therefore, the divine beast phoenix's blood essence's first attack directly shattered the square seal formed by the alchemy fire's shadow. Brother Ran. Yu Haoran took a deep breath when he saw that the alchemy furnace's alchemy fire was at a complete disadvantage. After swallowing the elixir used to conceal the instant recovery of his origin energy, he instructed the second doppelganger in his sea of consciousness. After receiving all the origin energy from the second doppelganger, Yu Haoran instantly recovered to his peak state and continued to channel his origin energy into the alchemy furnace's shadow. Only when the alchemy furnace's alchemy fire completely suppressed the fiery bird's blood essence could the energy contained in the blood essence be integrated into the spiritual liquid and enter the next step of pill condensation. Therefore, the battle between the alchemy furnace's alchemy fire and the fiery bird's shadow was a tug-of-war that determined whether he could successfully refine the nirvana pill in the end. After channeling all the origin energy in his dantian into the alchemy fire's shadow, Yu Haoran hurriedly took a real origin energy recovery elixir and held a 5th stage level 9 spirit stone tightly. After receiving the support of Yu Haoran's origin energy, the shadow's shadow continued to form seals with its 10 fingers. An identical square seal appeared once again on top of the divine beast phoenix's head. Facing the reappearing square seal, the divine beast phoenix's attack method was the same, which was to use valiant means to meet force with force. The result was exactly the same as the first battle. In the next hour, Yu Haoran, the second doppelganger, the alchemy furnace's shadow, and the divine beast phoenix transformed from the fiery bird's shadow fell into a cycle. It was a cycle where whoever exhausted their origin energy first would fail. With the help of the origin energy recovery elixir and spirit stone, the second doppelganger directly channeled origin energy into Yu Haoran's body. Similarly, with the help of the origin energy recovery elixir and spirit stone, as well as the origin energy channeled by the second doppelganger, Yu Haoran directly channeled origin energy into the alchemy furnace's shadow. With the help of Yu Haoran and the second doppelganger's shadow, the alchemy fire's shadow continued to form seals with its 10 fingers and blasted the divine beast phoenix transformed from the fiery bird's shadow. And the divine beast phoenix transformed from the fiery bird's shadow attacked the square seal again and again. But overall, the side with the real hope of winning was Yu Haoran, the second doppelganger, and the alchemy fire's shadow. Chapter 719. In the Qingya Pavilion. As the initiator of the dual flames, Yu Haoran was not affected by the collision of the two flames. However, for Chu Zhongyu and the others in the Qingya Pavilion, it was a situation of ice and fire. This was because they had to use all of their elemental energy to resist the impact of the energy waves from the cauldron. Every time they resisted, it consumed a terrifying amount of elemental energy from their dantian. Originally, Feng Qingyun was worried that his disciples would not be able to withstand the continuous impact of the energy waves, so he wanted them to leave the Qingya Pavilion temporarily. However, when he found that Chu Zhongyu and the others were desperately resisting the impact of the energy waves, their elemental energy was constantly being consumed and recovered. This process was 10 times faster than normal cultivation. He immediately dismissed the idea of persuading his disciples to leave. This rapid process of consuming and recovering elemental energy was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Chu Zhongyu and the others. It was an opportunity for them to increase their cultivation in a short period of time without any side effect. In the cauldron, the four opposing forces continued to repeat the monotonous cycle. However, as time passed, with the support of Yu Haoran and his second doppelganger regardless of the cost, the illusory image of the cauldron fire went from being at an absolute disadvantage to being at a stalemate. Now it had the absolute advantage, seeing that the divine beast Phoenix was only barely able to break the square seal formed by the illusory image of the elixir fire after 10 attacks. Yu Haoran secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Subsequently, he instructed his second doppelganger in his sea of consciousness not to inject any elemental energy into the cauldron fire for the time being. Furthermore, he was to use his own elemental energy to support the energy consumed by the illusory image of the elixir fire. Without the help of his second doppelganger, the attack power and speed of the illusory image of the elixir fire slowed down a little. However, the divine beast Phoenix, which had consumed almost 90% of its blood essence, was still losing. Boom! The divine beast Phoenix that was conjured by the blazing flames was smashed into countless sparks and flames by the force of the square seal after it failed to counter the square seal's attack. "Brother Ran, lend me a hand." Looking at the dancing sparks and flames in the pill furnace, Yu Haoran took a deep breath and directly shouted to the second doppelganger in the sea of consciousness. Without the slightest hesitation, the second clone directly poured all the essence energy that had just recovered 70% into Yu Haoran's dantian. With the support of the second doppelganger, Yu Haoran withdrew his right hand from the pill furnace and quickly formed a seal with his 10 fingers. At the same time, the soul power in his sea of consciousness directly merged with the pill fire phantom, controlling the pill fire phantom's 10 fingers to form a seal. Whether it was the seal formed by Yu Haoran or the seal formed by the illusory pill fire, every seal that was formed would swallow a portion of the sparks and flames, and then merge with the spirit liquid at the edge of the pill furnace. And when the first seal that swallowed the sparks and flames fused with the spirit liquid, a powerful suction force suddenly formed from the spirit liquid. This strong suction force began to forcibly draw and devour the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Qingya pavilion. As more and more seals that swallowed sparks and flames fused with the spirit liquid, the suction force from the spirit liquid became stronger and stronger. When the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Qingya pavilion could no longer meet the demand of the spirit liquid, the strong suction force began to draw the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the entire Qingyuan Guild Hall. And when the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Qingyuan Guild Hall could no longer meet the demand of the spirit liquid, the suction force began to draw in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth outside the Qingyuan Guild Hall. But at this time, Yu Haoran encountered a problem, and that was that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the entire Xianyang city was completely sealed by the formation. The suction force formed by the spirit liquid was simply unable to draw in the slightest bit of spiritual qi of heaven and earth from the formation. Your Majesty, I know that the body formed by your divine sense must be here. I will have to trouble you to open the sealing formation of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and lend me a hand. Yu Haoran continued to form seals with his 10 fingers as he pleaded to the void above his head. This Emperor will lend you a hand. In response to Yu Haoran's request, Emperor Qin didn't hesitate in the slightest. He informed his main body to open the sealing formation of the Qingyuan Guild Hall, and responded to Yu Haoran's request at the same time. Many thanks, Your Majesty. Feeling the suction force extending to the Qingyuan Guild Hall, Yu Haoran once again obtained a large amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. After raising his head to express his gratitude, he continued to speed up the formation of seals to swallow the sparks and flames in the pill furnace. With the assistance of the pill fire phantom's 10 fingers, it took less than 10 minutes for all the sparks and flames in the pill furnace to fuse into the spirit liquid. and at this time, the powerful suction force formed by the spirit liquid had already drawn in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within a radius of 15 kilometers. Of course, the drastic change in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had also alarmed many people. In the imperial palace, in the third prince's palace, Brother Tianyi, are you going to take action? Meng Xing, who hadn't left the Meng family of Xianying City, asked with an anxious expression as his fingers rapidly tapped on the table. Meng Xing, at this time, the Qingyuan Guild Hall can be said to be filled with experts like the clouds. Not only is there the old ancestor of your Meng family, but also my imperial father. Qin Tianyi looked at Meng Xing with a smile that wasn't a smile, and said in a tone as if he couldn't take action. If you and I take action, wouldn't we be courting death? Brother Tianyi, I, Meng Xing, am not a fool. How can I expose our existence in front of so many people? Facing Qin Tianyi's concern, Meng Xing stopped tapping on the table and said with a slightly sinister expression, I plan to use the death soldiers that I have raised to charge directly into the Qingya Pavilion. Then, I will use the method of the death soldiers' divine souls to self-destruct. Not only will I be able to destroy the pill refinement of that surnamed you, but I might even be able to take his life. What cultivation! Qin Tianyi didn't feel the slightest bit surprised by Meng Xing's method. In reality, it seemed that this was the only method that had a chance of success. However, he attached great importance to the cultivation of the death soldiers that Meng Xing had raised. This was because the higher the cultivation of the death soldiers, the stronger the might of their self-destruction. The more terrifying the destructive power produced, the higher the chance of killing Yu Haoran. Qin Tianyi couldn't say why he hated Yu Haoran so much, to the extent that he didn't hesitate to join hands with Meng Xing. Peak of first-grade martial saint, Meng Xing said with great pride. After all, death soldiers were different from subordinate. The cultivation of death soldiers had to start by selecting many young children who had an innate ability. While their minds were still not fully developed, they had to be instilled with the idea of loyalty. In the subsequent cultivation process, the methods used were even more cruel and bloody. Among 100 young children, no more than 5 would be able to survive in the end. More importantly, the amount of resources required to cultivate death soldiers was an astronomical figure. Ordinary forces simply couldn't afford it. Chapter 720. In the third prince's palace in the imperial palace. Not enough. Qin Tianyi shook her head and explained to Meng Xing, who had provided her with the cultivation of a peak first-grade martial saint. Meng Xing, you checked with your divine sense just now. The black bear beside Yu Haoran has successfully broken through to the 4th-rank martial saint realm. Moreover, his master, Feng Qinyun, is a person that even I can't see through. Therefore, a martial saint at the peak of the 1st-rank martial saint realm won't be able to destroy the pill that Yu Haoran is refining, let alone kill him. Then what do you think we should do? Qin Tianyi's explanation made Meng Xing stop smiling. He couldn't help but ask in annoyance. Other than the martial saint realm men of sacrifice, how many martial royal realm men of sacrifice do you have? Qin Tianyi frowned and thought for a while before she suddenly asked. I have a total of 6 martial royal realm men of sacrifice from the 1st rank to the 7th rank. In order to kill Yu Haoran, Meng Xing didn't hide anything. If that's the case, Qin Tianyi's frown instantly eased when she heard that Meng Xing had 6 martial royal realm experts. Then, she took out 6 fist-sized black balls from her storage ring and placed them on the table in front of Meng Xing. Meng Xing, send out all 6 martial royal realm men of sacrifice. If we do this, in order to ensure the secrecy of the plan, Qin Tianyi didn't tell Meng Xing the plan. Instead, she used her divine sense to communicate with him. Okay, let's do this. After hearing Qin Tianyi's plan, Meng Xing slammed the table and agreed excitedly. There's no time to lose. Take advantage of the fact that Yu Haoran is at a critical moment in refining the pill. Go and arrange it as soon as possible. Qin Tianyi's eyes flashed with excitement when she saw that Meng Xing agreed to sacrifice 6 martial royal realm men of sacrifice. Okay, I'll do it right away. Meng Xing nodded and left the palace excitedly. After Meng Xing left, Qin Tianyi also stood up and left the palace. She stood at the entrance of the palace and looked in the direction of the Qingyuan Guild Hall. 6 Martial Emperor Deathsworn and the Black Saliva Ball as bait, the final trump card of a peak first-grade Martial Saint Deathsworn. Yu Haoran, if you still can't die like this, it can only mean that the heavens are looking after you. I, Qin Tianyi, am also willing to admit defeat. In Qingya Pavilion, as the last spark and flame in the pill furnace were wrapped up by the imprint and merged with the spiritual liquid, the shadow of the pill fire automatically dispersed and returned to the pill furnace. Yu Haoran hurriedly used his spiritual will to guide the spirit liquid that had fused with Flamingo's blood essence energy back into the core of the pill furnace. Everything returned to normal. Now that they could no longer feel the energy fluctuations coming from the pill furnace, whether it was Feng Qinyun, Chu Zhongyu, or the others, they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After all, the continuous impact of power earlier had already pushed their essence energy and physical strength to the limit. If the impact of the power continued, they would have no choice but to temporarily retreat from the Qingya Pavilion. Subsequently, Chu Zhongyu and the others nodded to Feng Qinyun and then sat down cross-legged. They began to use the opportunity of the rapid consumption and recovery of their essence energy to break through the bottleneck that had been reached. In this regard, as the master, Feng Qinyun not only needed to continue to help Yu Haoran monitor the surrounding situation, but also needed to protect the few disciples who were breaking through. It could be said that it was very difficult. However, not only did Feng Qinyun not have the slightest dissatisfaction, his face revealed a gratified smile. Compared to Feng Qinyun's relaxed expression, Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged in front of the pill furnace, not only did not relax because of the success of Flamingo's blood essence, but his expression became more dignified. The process of tearing the 2 flames was actually equivalent to the process of melting and refining the spiritual medicine. In other words, the extremely dangerous flame tearing just now was only the completion of the initial refining of the nirvana pill. And the most difficult and most uncertain part of the pill condensation had not officially begun. Taking a deep breath, his right hand continued to press on the pill furnace, using the pill fire to warm the spiritual liquid in the pill furnace. He swallowed a large number of pills to recover his essence energy and began to recall the method of condensing the nirvana pill. It was different from the method of refining the 5 Lives Mysterious Gate pill and the Ice Heart Jade Bone pill. As a pill formula created by an ancient almighty pill god, the method of condensing the nirvana pill not only consumed a lot of soul power and essence energy, but the hand seals were also more complicated and varied. Along with the soul power in his sea of consciousness and the essence energy in his dantian recovering to the peak, Yu Haoran still did not have absolute confidence that he could completely perform the method of condensing the pill in one go. Therefore, in order to ensure the success of condensing the pill, he simply closed his eyes and concentrated on practicing the method of condensing the pill. In the face of Yu Haoran's sudden action of closing his eyes in contemplation, whether it was Feng Qinyun or the experts hidden in the void, their faces revealed puzzled expressions. Because with their experience, although they were not proficient in pill Dao, they knew and saw the refining process of many top pills. However, there had never been any kind of pill refinement that required Yu Haoran to stop halfway and meditate like he had done. What's more, among the experts hidden in the void, there were experts who were truly proficient in pill Dao. It was also from the mouths of a few experts who were proficient in pill Dao that everyone knew that Yu Haoran's contemplation was very likely to be practicing the method of condensing the pill. To be able to make Yu Haoran, who had successfully refined the 5 Lives mysterious gate pill, to practice the method of condensing the pill through contemplation. Everyone was filled with a strong interest in what kind of pill he was going to refine next. 15 minutes. After practicing the method of condensing the pill for a full 15 minutes, Yuhaoran suddenly opened his eyes. Immediately after, he withdrew his right hand that was pressing on the pill furnace, and then his 10 fingers quickly formed a seal. This is the method of condensing the pill from ancient times. Just as Yuhaoran's hands quickly formed a seal and began to condense the pill, an expert in pill Dao who had also reached the Grandmaster realm in the void could not control the shock in his heart and cried out involuntarily. After hearing the Grandmaster realm expert cry out involuntarily, whether it was Emperor Qin, who was the strongest at the scene, or Feng Qinyun, who was standing in the courtyard, their faces revealed incomparably shocked expressions. The method of condensing the pill from ancient times was generally passed down in the top forces, and many pill masters who had reached a certain level had also specially cultivated it. However, the number of pill masters who could truly comprehend and successfully use it was as few as Emperor Wu. They had only heard of it, but had never seen it before. No one would have thought that Yuhaoran, who was only at the Grandmaster realm in pill Dao, would not only grasp the method of condensing the pill from ancient times, but also be able to successfully use it. How could this not shock the experts hidden in the void? Prince Yifeng, who had condensed his spirit sense into a body, couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile as he looked at Emperor Qin with a frown. Chapter 721. In the void above the Qingya Pavilion. No wonder Emperor Qin was willing to betroth his most beloved and most talented princess Ling Fei to Yuhaoran. It turned out that he had long discovered Yuhaoran's amazing talent in alchemy and was trying to win him over in advance. Many experts at the scene were impressed and fearful of the Qin Emperor's foresight and means. Feeling the gazes of the crowd, the Qin Emperor maintained a calm expression. However, his heart was the same as everyone else's. He was also in a state of shock. At the same time, he was also like everyone else. He did not know that Yuhaoran had mastered and could perform the ancient pill condensing technique. Back then, he had decided to betroth his most beloved daughter, Ling Fei, to Yuhaoran. Firstly, his powerful cultivation allowed him to discover that Ling Fei had feelings for Yuhaoran when they parted in the palace, so he wanted to fulfill his daughter's wish. Secondly, through careful investigation, he found that Yuhaoran was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. In the future, he would definitely treat his daughter well. Third, it was his instinct as a powerhouse. He instinctively felt that Yuhaoran was extraordinary. Therefore, betrothing Princess Ling Fei to Princess Ling Fei had nothing to do with whether Yuhaoran had mastered the ancient pill condensing technique or not. Yuhaoran, who did not know that the ancient pill condensing technique he was using had shocked the experts in the void above him, was fully immersed in the pill condensing technique. Although after more than 10 evolutions, he had already memorized the alchemy technique. However, he was not as confident as he was now that he could perform the alchemy technique in one go. This was because the alchemy technique in ancient times became more difficult, more complicated, and more varied. However, when he performed 2/3 of the pill condensing technique, which was the crucial step that he was not completely sure of, the alchemy insights that he had gained from exploring countless ruins in his previous life were attracted by the ancient pill condensing technique and emerged one after another. While improving his alchemy insights, it also allowed him to easily take the most difficult and crucial step of the ancient pill condensing technique. Genius, Yuhaoran is definitely a rare alchemy genius in the profound sky continent. In the future, it is very likely that he will become a pill emperor. After seeing that Yuhaoran had successfully passed the most likely step of the alchemy technique, the alchemy grandmaster who had cried out in shock could not help but praise him again. Regarding this, not only did none of the peak experts present object, but they all nodded in agreement. Just as Yu Haoran didn't dare to relax in the slightest as he continued to compress and condense the spirit liquid in the pill furnace, 7 black-clothed men suddenly appeared in the Clear Source Guild Hall. Although the attention of Feng Qingyun and the experts in the sky were all focused on Yu Haoran and did not notice the black-clothed people who had quietly snuck into the Pure Yuan Guild Hall, He Xiong, who adhered to his duties and was extremely vigilant, was the first to discover the 7 black-clothed experts who had snuck into the Pure Yuan Guild Hall. Standing up from the corner of the courtyard wall, He Xiong growled at Feng Qingyun and then jumped over the wall to chase after the 7 black-clothed people who had snuck into the Pure Yuan Guild Hall. Regardless of whether the black-clothed people's target was his master or not, in order to ensure that his master could successfully complete the pill refinement, he had to eliminate the danger in its budding state. This was the reason why He Xiong chose to take the initiative to attack. After receiving He Xiong's warning, Feng Qingyun hurriedly retracted his gaze. He spread out his martial saint realm divine sense and used a special power of law to sense the source of the danger. The special power of law sensed that the source of the danger was the black-clothed people who had just snuck into the Pure Yuan Guild Hall. Therefore, Feng Qingyun immediately used his divine sense to inform He Xiong to keep the enemy outside the Pure Elegance Pavilion. The actions of He Xiong and Feng Qingyun attracted the attention of Emperor Qin at the same time. The divine sense of a second tribulation quasi-martial venerable expert instantly locked onto the 7 black-clothed people. After sensing the aura of the black-clothed people without any fluctuations of emotion, he immediately knew that these 7 black-clothed people were the death warriors raised by the top clans. In the entire Xianyang city, apart from the imperial family, only the top 4 clans had the strength to raise martial saint realm death warriors. Among the 4 clans, only Meng Xing of the Meng clan had an undying hatred with Yu Haoran. Thinking of this, Emperor Qin directly cast a questioning gaze at the Meng clan's old ancestor. Seeing Emperor Qin's questioning gaze, the Meng clan's old ancestor couldn't help but frown. In the end, he suppressed his anger and used his divine sense to ask, "Your Majesty, what do you mean?" The reaction of the Meng clan's old ancestor caused Emperor Qin to frown and have no choice but to remind him. Carefully observe the 7 black-clothed people who sneaked into the Qingyuan Guild Hall. After hearing Emperor Qin's reminder, the Meng clan's old ancestor used his divine sense of a second tribulation quasi-martial venerable to instantly lock onto the 7 black-clothed death warriors. Different from Emperor Qin's speculation, the Meng clan's old ancestor could determine that these 7 black-clothed people were the death warriors of the Meng clan just by looking at the cultivation method of the black-clothed death warriors. Moreover, from the direction they were lurking in, it was obvious that they were heading towards the Qingya Pavilion. Their target must be Yu Haoran, who was refining pills. Who was Yu Haoran? He was a hidden dragon who could master and use the ancient pill congealing technique. In the future, he had great hopes of becoming a pill emperor. If he wanted to safely cross the heart tribulation and soul tribulation, and if he wanted to break through to a higher realm, Yu Haoran was an indispensable help. Originally, he wanted to wait until Yu Haoran finished refining pills, and then find a way to establish a friendship with him so that he could trouble him to refine pills for him in the future. However, the black-clothed death warriors who sneaked into the Qingyuan Guild Hall and planned to sneak attack Yu Haoran turned out to be the death warriors of the Meng clan. How could this not make the Meng clan's old ancestor angry? The body condensed from divine sense flashed and appeared in front of the martial saint death warrior. Before he could react, the Meng clan's old ancestor directly knocked him out with a palm. Then, using the soul-searching secret technique, he began to check the martial saint death warrior's memories. While the Meng clan's old ancestor was checking the martial saint death warrior's memories, the Black Bear also relied on its first-grade sage realm strength to quietly finish off the other 6 martial emperor death warriors. Moreover, it found 6 fourth-grade black saliva balls on their bodies that could threaten martial Saint Meng Sheng. Through the soul-searching secret technique to check the martial Saint Death Warrior's memories, the Meng clan's old ancestor knew who the mastermind behind the scenes was. However, the mastermind behind the scenes made him angry and helpless. Zheng Kai, don't tell me you plan to continue protecting him? Seeing the Meng clan's old ancestor, who had smashed the martial Saint Death Warrior with a palm and returned to the void, Emperor Qin sighed and asked, "After all, he is the only child of my bloodline." The Meng clan's old ancestor called Zheng Kai said with a helpless expression. Chapter 722. In the sky above the Qingya Pavilion. Your Majesty, what do you mean? Emperor Qin reminded solemnly. Meng Zhengkai's heart tightened as he hurriedly asked. Seeing that Meng Zhengkai was still unaware of the grave consequences, Emperor Qin couldn't help but remind him, Meng Xiang's oath. Damn it. Hearing Emperor Qin mention Meng Xiang's oath, Meng Zhengkai immediately recalled that when Emperor Qin rescued Meng Xing from Yu Haoran and returned Meng Xing, the Meng family had promised Yu Haoran some time ago. One of them was that Meng Xiang swore by the rules of the heavenly Tao to guarantee that the experts of the Meng family above the martial saint realm would absolutely not secretly take revenge on Yu Haoran. Otherwise, as the patriarch of the Meng family, Meng Xiang would definitely suffer a backlash from the rules of the heavenly Tao, and his soul would forever fall into hell. Among the 7 men of sacrifice that Meng Xing had sent out, one of them was a martial sage man of sacrifice. Just as Emperor Qin had said, the moment the martial sage man of sacrifice made his move, Meng Xiang would suffer the backlash of the heavenly law and his soul would be destroyed. Spoiling a child is like killing a child. I was wrong. Meng Zhengkai closed his eyes and said in self-reproach. Then, a resolute aura rose from his body as he looked directly at Emperor Qin and said, Your Majesty, since the Meng family is a subject of the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, then let's act according to the laws of the kingdom of Qin. I guarantee that I will give him a dignified death. Seeing that Meng Zhengkai had finally thought it through, Emperor Qin nodded and promised. At the same time, a trace of joy rose in his heart. Using the laws of the kingdom of Qin to deal with Meng Xing was the promise he had made to Yu Haoran. Now, he could use this promise to eliminate the resentment in Yu Haoran's heart, so that he could obtain his forgiveness and the Ice Heart Jade Bone Elixir. After passing the most difficult step of refining the elixir, Yu Haoran didn't let his guard down. He continued to concentrate on using the pill condensation technique. He waited until the last imprint was perfectly imprinted on the pill furnace. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Then, he pressed one hand on the pill furnace and continued to use the furnace fire to warm the elixir, while checking his own body's condition. After that, he was surprised to find that he had only expended less than half of his soul force and origin energy when he had used the core condensation technique in a spurt of energy. This situation made Meng Zhengkai was very puzzled. Closing his eyes, he carefully recalled the entire process of using the core condensing technique. Finally, he understood why the consumption of soul power and origin energy was so low. First of all, under the influence of the pill condensation technique, the insights of the Pill Dao Grandmasters and Great Grandmasters that he had obtained from exploring the ruins in his previous life emerged in his knowledge sea. While rapidly increasing his Pill Dao cultivation, it also constantly increased the strength of his spirit, causing his spirit to rapidly increase. The increased soul power did not lose out to the consumption of soul power at all. Now, half of the soul power was consumed when he first used the pill condensation technique. Secondly, in the process of condensing the elixir, the spiritual liquid didn't stop devouring the heaven and earth spirit qi, so the amount of yuan li needed to form the imprint was very little. Since he had figured out his situation, Yu Haoran didn't pay attention to his sea of consciousness and dantian anymore. Then, he used the spirit stones to recover the little soul power and unveil. At the same time, he began to practice the last important step of refining the nirvana pill, which was pill division. Fortunately, compared to the pill condensation technique, the pill division technique was much simpler. He only practiced for less than 5 minutes, and he already knew what to do. When the elixir in the pill furnace reached the limit, the soul power and Yuan Li in the sea of consciousness and Dantian also reached the peak. Without any hesitation, he retracted his right hand from the pill furnace. Then, he directly used the pill division technique and successfully divided 3 elixirs. Although the nirvana pill didn't need to withstand the lightning tribulation like the 5 lives mystical gate pill and the ice heart jade bone elixir, the strength of the pulling force at the end was also related to whether the elixir had the nirvana effect. Therefore, the next step was to continue waiting. After nurturing for nearly 30 minutes, after feeling that the 3 elixirs in the pill furnace had reached the limit, Yu Haoran raised his head and asked Emperor Qin in the void, "Your Majesty, can you stop the heaven and earth spirit qi sealing array?" After hearing Yu Haoran's request, Emperor Qin couldn't help but frown and ask, "Haoran, what kind of elixir are you refining that requires hundreds of years of accumulated spirit qi in the city?" It wasn't that he was distressed about the consumption of spirit qi, but he was very interested in the elixir that Yu Haoran was refining. "Your Majesty, you just have to turn off the sealing array. You will know when the elixir is completed." After Yu Haoran kept him in suspense, he took out 18 fourth stage first-rank spirit stones from his storage ring, threw them all to Feng Qinyun, and instructed, "Master, when the elixir is completed, listen to my command and break the spirit stones." "Understood." Nodding heavily, Feng Qinyun used his divine sense to control the 18 spirit stones, making them float in front of his eyes so that he could break the 4th stage first-rank spirit stones in time. After everything was ready, Yu Haoran took a deep breath, then suddenly pressed his hands on the pill furnace and shouted, "Elixir is completed! Chong! Chong! Chong!" Accompanied by Yu Haoran's shout, 3 high-pitched cries of the phoenix came from the pill furnace. The cries resounded through the sky, and everyone in Xianying City could hear it clearly. In the imperial palace, in the 3rd prince's palace. After hearing the cries of the phoenix, Qin Tianyi immediately used his divine sense to check the situation in Qingya Pavilion. Then, his face revealed a trace of a bitter smile, knowing that his carefully arranged plan had completely failed. However, failure was failure. Qin Tianyi didn't care much. After all, the death soldiers that planned to sneak attack Yu Haoran were arranged by Meng Xing, and had nothing to do with him. Meng Clan, in a beautiful courtyard in the backyard. Meng Xing, who also heard the cries of the phoenix, quickly used his divine sense to check, just like Qin Tianyi. When he found that Yu Haoran was about to succeed in refining the elixir, and 7 black-clothed death soldiers were lying side by side in front of Qingya Pavilion's courtyard, Meng Xing's face couldn't help but change. Then, he roared very angrily, and directly left the Meng clan, going straight to the imperial palace, intending to discuss with Qin Tianyi how to continue the plan to take revenge on Yu Haoran. In Qingya Pavilion, accompanied by the high-pitched cries, 3 phoenixes with noble expressions, with a body size of more than 70 meters, flapped their wings and flew out from the pill furnace, and then directly flew into the sky. With a body size of more than 70 meters and a height of hundreds of meters, almost everyone in Xianying City could clearly see it. After ordinary people saw the phoenixes, they knelt down and shouted, "Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!" Warriors with a certain level of cultivation used their martial skills and quickly rushed to the Qingyuan Guild Hall where the phoenixes appeared. Chapter 723. In the air above Qingya Pavilion, the 3 divine beast phoenixes that flew out of the cauldron stood back to back in a triangular formation. Then, they opened their thin beaks and inhaled the dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth in Xianyang City. The dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth surged like a surging sea and entered the bodies of the three divine beast phoenixes. Rebirth, rebirth, fourth tier third rank nirvana pill. When the pill master heard the cries of the strange beasts in the cauldron, he felt a faint sense of familiarity. When he saw the three divine beast phoenixes fly out of the cauldron, he immediately thought of the origin of the pill. Once again, he was unable to control the extreme shock in his heart and involuntarily cried out, "Nirvana pill!" When they heard the pill master involuntarily cry out the origin of the pill, the expressions of the dozens of powerhouses in the air changed and they softly muttered to themselves. The nirvana pill, other than having the heaven-defying effect of rebirth and rebirth, could also greatly increase the foundation of a martial honorable powerhouse and had the effect of assisting in breaking through to the martial honorable realm. Some of the powerhouses who reacted quickly were quickly replaced with excitement and immediately summoned their original bodies so that they could participate in the fight for the nirvana pill. Raising his head to look at the three divine beast phoenixes that were crazily absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, Yuhaoran directly stood up and used his divine sense to carefully examine the situation of each divine beast phoenix absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Master, directly break 6 spirit stones in the southwest direction. Through careful observation, Yuhaoran quickly discovered that the divine beast phoenix in the southwest direction was gradually slowing down its speed of absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Its divine color was also gradually dimming, so he hurriedly instructed. His divine sense controlled 6 4th-tier first-rank spirit stones and instantly appeared in the southwest direction. Feng Qinyun immediately used his Yuan Qi to break the spirit stones. The spiritual Qi within the 4th-tier first-rank spirit stones had already completely turned into a liquid state. Faced with the pure liquid state of the divine beast phoenix in the southwest direction, which had already begun to dim, suddenly trembled and immediately began to absorb the liquid formed by the spirit stones. When the liquid within the 6 4th-tier first-rank spirit stones was completely absorbed, the divine beast phoenix in the southwest direction immediately self-destructed. Then, countless flames that contained a scorching aura converged to form a pill that was slightly larger than a longan. With a wave of his sleeve, Yuhaoran put away the pill transformed from the divine beast phoenix. He didn't have time to check the quality of the nirvana pill and immediately instructed Feng Qinyun. Master, there are 6 4th-tier first-grade spirit stones in the northeast direction. After hearing Yuhaoran's reminder, Feng Qinyun, who had been preparing, immediately moved and shattered the 6 stage 4 first-rank spirit stones. Similarly, after absorbing the pure spiritual liquid from the 4th-grade spirit stone, the second divine beast phoenix quickly transformed into a nirvana pill and was put away by Yuhaoran with a wave of his sleeve. After that, Yuhaoran raised his head and looked at the last divine beast phoenix that was transformed from the elixir. When he saw that the last divine beast, the phoenix, was not only not slowing down in the slightest, it was even increasing in speed, he could not help but reveal an expression of ecstasy. This meant that the last nirvana pill's grade and effect might exceed 4th-tier 3rd grade. It had an unimaginable ability to restore and upgrade a completely collapsed foundation. In the void above his head, the dozen or so powerhouses who had rushed over in time also looked at the last divine beast phoenix with excitement. They began to sit cross-legged in their hearts, and began to think about what price they would have to pay to exchange for this nirvana pill. 5 minutes. The last divine beast phoenix in the air swallowed the heaven and earth spirit chi for a full 5 minutes and let out a high-pitched cry before exploding. It transformed into a crystal-clear elixir, but inside it was a divine beast phoenix that spread its wings and flew high. Facing the last fully formed nirvana pill, although the dozen or so powerhouses in the void all revealed greed in their eyes, none of them dared to make a move to snatch it. In the end, They could only watch as Yu Haoran put away the last elixir. Taking out the 2 elixirs that he had just put away, Yu Haoran examined them carefully and discovered that the elixirs that he had refined had an unprecedented 3 grades. The first elixir that was transformed into the Nirvana pill was of a 4th tier 3rd grade as expected. As for the second Nirvana pill, its grade had reached the 5th grade of the 4th tier. But what shocked Yu Haoran the most was the 3rd Nirvana pill, which was of a 4th tier 7th grade. An elixir of this grade was a top-notch elixir that even the Valley Master and head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters could not refine together. Taking a deep breath and suppressing the ecstasy in his heart, Yu Haoran put away the 3 Nirvana pills and then looked up at the void. Haoran, well done. The first person to leave the void and appear in the Qingya Pavilion was Emperor Qin, who among the dozen or so powerhouses was the most qualified to be the first to congratulate Yu Haoran on his success in refining the elixir. Facing Emperor Qin, who had landed in the Qingya Pavilion, Yu Haoran hurriedly cupped his fists and thanked him. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your help just now. If not for Emperor Qin's timely action to close the array that sealed off the spirit qi and provide sufficient spirit qi of heaven and earth, the Nirvana pill would not have been successfully refined this time. Haoran, with your relationship with me, do you still need to be so polite?" Faced with Yu Haoran's thanks, Emperor Qin pretended to be displeased and criticized him. In response, Yu Haoran could not help but roll his eyes. He knew that Emperor Qin wanted to use this as an excuse to mend their relationship. "Hello, young friend." Not long after Emperor Qin appeared in the Qingya Pavilion, a dignified middle-aged man in his 40s appeared in the Qingya Pavilion. His tone was quite gentle as he greeted Emperor Qin. "The ancestor of the Meng family who is about to become a martial honorable?" Yu Haoran asked tentatively. In fact, he had already determined the other party's true origin. After all, Meng Xing's appearance was close to 70% similar to the other party's. Moreover, he was able to stand side by side with Emperor Qin. Other than the ancestor of the Meng family who was about to become a martial honorable, there was no one else. In response, Meng Zhengkai nodded his head in acknowledgement. However, he did not say much. Because Meng Xing had sent his men of sacrifice to launch a sneak attack, Meng Zhengkai knew that if he wanted to ease the relationship between Yu Haoran and the Meng family, he would have to wait until Meng Xing was executed on the spot. Therefore, after a simple greeting with Yu Haoran, Meng Zhengkai left the Qingya Pavilion in a flash and quickly returned to the Meng family. He called for Meng Xiang and Meng Yun and began to discuss how to obtain Yu Haoran's forgiveness. In the face of the temptation of the Nirvana pill, he was able to stay true to his heart. Looking at the ancestor of the Meng family, who had only greeted him and left the Qingya Pavilion, Yu Haoran praised him in admiration. Then, he looked at Emperor Qin and commented in a somewhat contemptuous tone. Chapter 724. In the Qingya Pavilion. In the face of Yu Haoran's self-righteous evaluation, Emperor Qin couldn't help but roll his eyes just like before. "What do you mean by sharpening your mind even more? If it wasn't for the fact that Meng Xing sent out a death warrior to ambush you, Meng Zhengkai, who felt that he was in the wrong, wouldn't have been embarrassed to continue facing you. With Meng Zhengkai's thirst for strength, I'm afraid that not only will he not give up on the fight for the Nirvana pill, he will even ask you to help him refine the 5 Lives Mysterious Gate pill and the 3 Lines Spirit Cleansing pill that can help him pass through the soul tribulation. Haoran, since you and Fair are about to be engaged, then you are considered a member of the royal family. You should call me Imperial Uncle." Just after Meng Xing left the Qingya Pavilion, a middle-aged man who looked somewhat similar to Emperor Qin, but with more handsome facial features, more likely to cause women to scream, called out with a gentle expression. "Haoran, this is Prince Yifeng, my younger brother." Seeing the handsome middle-aged man appear in the Qingya Pavilion, Emperor Qin secretly raised his guard and introduced him to Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran greets Prince Yifeng. After hearing Emperor Qin's introduction, Yu Haoran hurriedly greeted him. Although he had never really come into contact with Prince Yifeng in his previous life, Yu Haoran still remembered his experience and fame. In his previous life, the Emperor Qin kingdom had been in an unstoppable war at the beginning. The reason why it fell into a stalemate was because of this ambitious Prince Yifeng, who wanted to ascend the throne and almost caused the Qin kingdom to fall apart. Until his rebirth, it seemed that Emperor Qin couldn't do anything to Prince Yifeng. Haoran, when your engagement ceremony is held, Imperial Uncle will give you a generous gift. Prince Yifeng didn't care about Yu Haoran's slight estrangement. He still gently expressed his goodwill. Thank you, Prince. No matter what kind of character Yifeng had in his previous life, or what kind of serious consequences he had caused to the Emperor Qin kingdom, none of this had anything to do with him. Therefore, in the face of his kindness, Yu Haoran automatically removed the estrangement that had appeared subconsciously in his heart and thanked him warmly. It's not easy to refine a heaven-defying pill like the rank 4 Nirvana pill. I'm sure you're very tired right now. I won't disturb your rest. Sensing the change in Yu Haoran's attitude, Prince Yifeng smiled and bid farewell. Subsequently, he strode out of Qingya Pavilion and executed his movement technique to return to King Yi's residence. Seeing Prince Yifeng leave the Qingya Pavilion, Yu Haoran originally wanted to tease Emperor Qin, but after seeing his gloomy expression, he chose to shut up. In the Emperor Qin's family, kinship was far less important than the position of the emperor. Presumably, the conflict between Emperor Qin and Prince Yifeng had been going on for a long time. I am Su Hongwen. Greetings, Grandmaster. Just after Prince Yifeng left the Qingya Pavilion, an old man in a cyan robe with slightly gray hair and a ruddy complexion greeted him with a smile. Haoran, this is... Seeing the cyan-clothed old man appear in the Qingya Pavilion, Emperor Qin immediately put away his gloomy expression and wanted to introduce him to Yu Haoran, but he was immediately interrupted by Yu Haoran's next words. Could it be that you are Grandmaster Su Hongwen, who is knowledgeable, omniscient, and known as Householder Qing Lian? Yu Haoran asked in surprise. Yu Haoran not only knew the cyan-clothed old man in front of him, but he was also very familiar with him. This was because they had fought more than once in their previous lives. Of course, the so-called fight was not a battle between life and death. It was a competition of their understanding of alchemy, as well as a differentiation of knowledge. Su Hongwen gave him the feeling that there was nothing in this world that he did not know, even if it was a secret from ancient times, the Middle Ages, and the recent ages. At the same time, Su Hongwen was also a knowledgeable person. Whether it was the main martial arts, the auxiliary system of alchemy, equipment, formation, talisman, and so on, it seemed that there was nothing that he was not proficient in. It could be said that in his previous life, apart from his enemies, Su Hongwen was the person who had left the deepest impression on him. Householder's good reputation is just the favor of my fellow Taoists. As for being knowledgeable, omniscient, and omniscient, that is just a rumor in the streets. Su Hongwen hurriedly said modestly in the face of Yu Haoran's praise. Yu Haoran, the old man in front of you is not human. Facing the humble and polite Su Hongwen, Yu Haoran wanted to continue praising him, and use this to get closer to him so that he could understand some of the questions that had accumulated in his heart in his previous life. However, the Thaling in his sea of consciousness gave him an unbelievable reminder. Thaling, what did you mean by what you said just now? Forcefully suppressing the shock in his heart, Yu Haoran hurriedly asked. Yu Haoran, don't ask too much. You only need to know that the old man in front of you is not human. You only need to have a good relationship with him, and there will be unexpected benefits in the future. Facing Yu Haoran's questioning, Thaling was a little regretful that he had lost his voice due to excessive shock and attracted Yu Haoran's attention. This was because the origin of the old man in front of him was too shocking, and he had existed for too long. If this were to be leaked, all the experts in the entire Tianqian continent would probably fall into a frenzy, and even the reclusive experts and Emperor Realm experts would be alerted. Therefore, Faling could only violate their agreement and not reveal the true origin of the green-clothed old man. Back then, because of the 1 Qi into 3 Pure Ones technique, they had agreed not to keep any secret. Yu Haoran wanted to continue asking. However, considering that the situation at the scene did not allow it, he could only temporarily suppress the urge to ask and continue to deal with Su Hongwen. Perhaps it was because of Thaling's reminder just now, but when Yu Haoran was in front of Su Hongwen, his attitude was obviously much more enthusiastic. However, it did not arouse the suspicion and disgust of Emperor Qin and Su Hongwen. After all, Su Hongwen's current identity was that of a grandmaster who was proficient in alchemy. Grandmaster Yu, just as Prince Yifeng said just now, it is not easy to refine a heaven-defying pill like the 4th step nirvana pill. I believe you are very tired right now, so I will pay you a visit another day. In the simple exchange just now, Su Hongwen discovered that Yu Haoran was also a knowledgeable person. Especially in terms of alchemy, he did not lose to him in the slightest. This made him want to continue the exchange, but seeing the displeasure on Emperor Qin's face, Su Hongwen knew that today was not the right time and hurriedly said goodbye. Grandmaster Su, you are both a senior and an elder. This junior should personally pay you a visit. Although he was also reluctant to let Su Hongwen leave, there were still many things that needed to be dealt with. Therefore, when he agreed to let Su Hongwen leave, he also directly asked for his residence. Grandmaster Yu, this old man likes to travel around and has never had a fixed residence. When the time comes, this old man will personally pay you a visit. Facing Yu Haoran's questioning, Su Hongwen smiled and refused. Then, like Prince Yifeng, he walked out of the Qingya Pavilion and disappeared from the Qingyuan Guild Hall. The Meng family's ancestor, Prince Yifeng, and Su Hongwen, who were the most competitive for the Nirvana pill, only had a simple exchange with Yu Haoran before leaving. They did not mention the Nirvana pill at all. This caused the dozen or so peak powerhouses who were still in the air to gradually come back to their senses. Not only was it very rude to directly propose a trade for the Nirvana pill, which had a heaven-defying effect, but it would also provoke Yu Haoran's displeasure. It would not be beneficial for them to ask for his help in alchemy in the future. Chapter 725. In the Qingya Pavilion. Haoran, I have a piece of good news. Are you interested in hearing it? The Qin Emperor asked with a smile after waiting for all the peak experts in the void to meet Yu Haoran and leave the Qingya Pavilion after a short exchange. He motioned for Feng Qinyun to move the 7 corpses in. Your Majesty, you know that I, Yu Haoran, am a straightforward person. I don't like to guess in a roundabout way. So, if you have any good news, just tell me. Facing Emperor Qin's act of keeping him in suspense, Yu Haoran could not help but roll his eyes and urge him. Shaking his head, Emperor Qin was not in a hurry to tell Yu Haoran the truth. Instead, he let him observe the 7 corpses in black. Men of sacrifice. Through the deathly aura emitted by the 7 corpses and the self-inflicted wounds on their palms, Yu Haoran immediately guessed the true origin of the 7 corpses. That's right, they are men of sacrifice. Seeing that Yu Haoran could discern the true origin of the 7 corpses through simple observation, Emperor Qin was a little surprised. He nodded and confirmed. Then, he continued to ask with a smile. Haoran, can you guess the origin of these 7 men of sacrifice? The Meng clan. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran gritted his teeth and said. He had not only encountered men of sacrifice in his previous life, but he had also tried to raise them. He was very clear about the difficulty of raising men of sacrifice and the huge amount of resources needed. In the entire Xianyang city, Only the imperial family and the top families like the Meng clan could raise men of sacrifice. Someone who could send men of sacrifice to ambush him, especially men of sacrifice in the martial saint and martial king realm, must have a deep grudge against him. There was no need to think too much about who it was. It must be Meng Xing who wanted to kill him. However, when he thought about how Emperor Qin had agreed to his conditions when he handed Meng Xing over at Qingyun Peak, Yu Haoran could not help but ask, "Your Majesty, according to our agreement, the Meng clan should not and would not dare to send men of sacrifice in the martial saint realm to deal with me. Didn't you mention to the Meng clan the conditions of the heavenly law oath?" "Haoran, don't misunderstand. It was Meng Xing's decision to send men of sacrifice. It has nothing to do with the Meng clan." Seeing that Yu Haoran misunderstood him and the Meng clan, Emperor Qin quickly explained. The men of sacrifice of the martial saint realm were personally killed by the ancestor of the Meng clan, Meng Zhengkai. Meng Xing of the Emperor of the Emperor of the Emperor, Meng Xing of the Emperor. The of Emperor of the Emperor of the Emperor of the Emperor of Emperor of the clan of the Emperor of Emperor. At least he is. Hearing that the Meng family's old ancestor was willing to sacrifice Meng Xing to protect the entire Meng family, Yu Haoran's murderous intent gradually calmed down. Meng of the the sacrifice. Of black. But black gave him 6 level 4 black saliva balls before he took action. He said that he had found them from the bodies of the 6 men of sacrifice. Originally, Yu Haoran had planned to give the 6 black saliva balls to the eldest senior brother and the others, so that they could have a trump card to save their lives and turn the situation around. After all, these 6 black saliva balls were level 4. They had the power to directly kill martial emperors and seriously injure martial saints. However, the faint smell left on the black saliva balls caught his attention. Black, stop. Yu Haoran signaled Black to not move the 7 corpses for the time being. He carefully identified the smell left on the palms of the 6 martial emperors. Finally, he looked at Emperor Qin with a grave expression. "Haoran, what's wrong?" Yu Haoran's strange behavior just now made Emperor Qin feel quite puzzled. Looking up at Emperor Qin, Yu Haoran thought for a moment and finally said, "Your Majesty, there is another person who wants to sneak attack me, Yu Haoran, besides Meng Xing." "Who is it?" When Yu Haoran raised his head, the worry in his eyes made Emperor Qin feel uneasy. "It is your Majesty's most valued son, the 3rd Prince, Qin Tianyi." After saying the name of the murderer word by word, Yu Haoran stared at Emperor Qin to see his next reaction and how to deal with it. "Are you sure?" Emperor Qin asked in disbelief. "Your Majesty, I have a secret method that can analyze the smell left on the black saliva balls." Facing Emperor Qin's question, Yu Haoran raised the black saliva balls in his hand and pointed out. "Very coincidentally, I have been in contact with the 3rd Prince before and am very familiar with his smell. And the smell left on the black saliva balls is exactly the same as the 3rd Prince's. So, I can be sure that the sneak attack plan must have been set up by the 3rd Prince, who is better at scheming. He also took the initiative to provide the black saliva balls." At this point, Yu Haoran couldn't help but sneer. "I think Meng Xing is just a gun in his hand, a gun to kill people. Haoran, can you let me think about it?" Facing Yu Haoran's confident speculation, Emperor Qin asked with a slight panic. Back then, when Yu Haoran was refining the 5 Lives Mystery Gate pill, Qin Tianyi had incited and joined forces with others to cause trouble and destroy. She also didn't hesitate to severely injure He Xiong, so she had the motive to sneak attack Yu Haoran. Moreover, 6 martial Emperor Realm Death soldiers holding the black saliva balls attracted the attention of Feng Qinyun and He Xiong. Martial Saint Realm Death soldiers launching a fatal attack was also Qin Tianyi's best method. So, Emperor Qin believed that his speculation was true. But what he didn't expect was that his most valued son actually wanted to kill his most valued son-in-law. This made him a little unsure of how to deal with the trouble in front of him. After all, the body in Qingya Pavilion was only a body formed by divine sense and couldn't deal with it as calmly and decisively as the main body. Your Majesty, no matter what you do in the end, I won't have any opinions. Emperor Qin's slightly panicked escape made Yu Haoran mistakenly think that Qin Tianyi had a very important position in his heart. Seeing that the engagement ceremony was about to be held, he couldn't bear to make things too difficult for him. In the end, he chose to take a step back and persuade him. I know, I'll return to the palace first. Anxious to return to his main body and deal with the troublesome matter in front of him, Emperor Qin directly disappeared from Qingya Pavilion after informing him. He Xiong, deal with it. Pointing at the 7 corpses in front of him, Yu Haoran ordered He Xiong. He Xiong's method of dealing with the corpses was very simple. First, he moved the corpses to a place where Yu Haoran couldn't see, then he opened his bloody mouth and directly swallowed them into his body. Although the smell of the 7 death soldiers' corpses was ordinary, they were completely cultivated with resources. The energy contained in the corpses was not inferior to the top spirit stones. Chapter 726. In the Qingya Pavilion. Master, thank you for your hard work. After He Xiong left the Qingya Pavilion with the corpses of the 7 men of sacrifice, Yu Haoran adjusted his emotions and turned to thank Feng Qingyun with a smile. Haoran, didn't I tell you before that I am willing to protect you and it is also my honor? Feng Qingyun waved his hand in response to Yu Haoran's thank. Then, he looked at Chu Zhongyu and the others who were breaking through and said happily, Haoran, thanks to you refining the Nirvana pill, your senior brothers and junior brothers have gained a lot this time. After hearing his master's reminder, Yu Haoran also quickly observed his senior brothers who were breaking through. After careful observation, he found that it was just as his master had said. With the help of the impact of the 2 flames and the attraction of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth during the process of condensing the pill, his senior brothers and junior brothers had gained a lot. For example, Wu Jingjun, who had outstanding talent and potential, had advanced 3 whole realms after advancing to the next realm. Currently, he was already at the early stage of the 3rd grade martial ancestor realm. Even his second senior brother, who had the most ordinary talent and potential, had broken through a small realm and was now a 2nd grade martial great master. As for Gongsun Yuding, who had the potential to be a top genius, because she did not bear the impact of the flames, she did not have a deep understanding of the realms. As a result, with the help of the dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth, she could only break through 2 small realms. Seeing the outstanding performance of his senior brothers and junior brothers, he had more confidence in their ability to successfully complete the tasks he had arranged for them in the future. After that, Yu Haoran did not pay attention to his senior brothers and junior brothers who were either breaking through or consolidating their cultivation with the help of the remaining spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Qingya Pavilion. He took out the 4th rank, 5th grade Nirvana pill and gave it to Feng Qingyun. Master, this Nirvana pill is for you. Looking at the Nirvana pill that Yu Haoran gave to him, Feng Qingyun was obviously worried. Logically speaking, as a master, he should not accept the Nirvana pill that his disciple had painstakingly refined. However, the Nirvana pill's heaven-defying effects were extremely useful for his current state. With the help of the Nirvana elixir, not only could he continue to break through to the martial sage realm in a short period of time, but the Nirvana elixir also contained the special energy of rising from the ashes, which was unimaginably helpful to his further comprehension of the power of laws. Seeing the worried expression on Feng Qingyun's face, Yu Haoran knew what he was hesitating about, so he forced the pill bottle into his hands and turned to walk back to his room. Feng Qingyun looked at Yu Haoran as he walked into the room. He then looked down at the nirvana pill in his hand and smiled in relief. After Chu Zhongyu successfully consolidated his breakthrough, Feng Qingyun urged him and He Xiong to continue protecting the other disciples. Then, he quickly returned to his room. He intended to use the nirvana pill to further improve his cultivation and strength so that he could make his disciple proud in the upcoming engagement ceremony. Just as Yu Haoran was using the 7th grade 4th level nirvana pill to repair his collapsed foundation, 4 major events occurred in Xianyang City that shook the entire empire. The first event that shook the entire nation, although it was only spread among the ordinary citizens and low-level martial artists, but the meaning behind it was far-reaching. It was rumored that the emperor of the Emperor Qin Kingdom was the reincarnation of the divine dragon of the 9th heaven, who was protected by the heavens and earth. He was invincible and invincible. The reincarnation of the divine dragon was to unify the profound sky continent and establish a prosperous homeland where everyone lived and worked in peace. The birth of the 3 divine beasts, the phoenixes, was to awaken the true dragon's consciousness from its slumber and officially start the conquest of the Emperor Qin Kingdom to unify the world. Regarding the rumor of the true dragon's reincarnation, experts of the martial ancestor realm and above only treated it as a joke and laughed it off. But to Xianyang City and the aristocratic families of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, only they themselves knew how important and terrifying this rumor was. The second event that shook the entire nation was that Qin Fengxiu, the son of the Assistant Minister of Rites, Qin Zhichang, offended the emperor's will and attempted to sneak attack the emperor's son-in-law outside the city, causing the latter to be seriously injured. After the Ministry of Justice's interrogation, the emperor approved to directly behead him outside the Meridian Gate. At the same time, the Assistant Minister of Rites, Qin Zhichang, was removed from his position. The crime of a mere Assistant Minister of Rites' son would not have caused such a big stir. But the joint petition of 100 Confucian scholars and the action of tens of thousands of Confucian scholars kneeling in the North City truly shocked the entire Xianyang City. What shocked the entire city even more was that the emperor, who had always followed the principles of Confucianism and regarded Confucian scholars as pillars of the city, not only tore up the petition on the spot, but also ordered the imperial guards to forcibly expel the tens of thousands of Confucian scholars kneeling in the North City. If the matter ended like this, it would only alarm Xianyang City at most, and it would not affect the entire Qin Kingdom. But when the officials of the Ministry of Justice asked to behead Qin Fengxiu, the 100 Confucian scholars who had jointly submitted a petition, the tens of thousands of Confucian scholars kneeling in the North City, and the tens of thousands of Confucian scholars who had rushed over after hearing the news all knelt in the execution ground and recited the Analects of Confucius, the Book of Holy Studies, loudly to continue to plead for Qin Fengxiu. In the face of the joint petition of nearly 100,000 Confucian scholars, everyone thought that Emperor Qin would give Qin Fengxiu a way out. However, to everyone's surprise, in the face of the joint petition of nearly 100,000 Confucian scholars, Emperor Qin issued an imperial edict with only 3 words, 3 bloody words: kill, kill, kill. At the same time, the imperial guards who guarded the imperial palace were directly sent out. Nearly 100,000 Confucian scholars, under the strangulation of the imperial guards whose cultivation was at least in the martial king realm, were completely strangled in just half an hour. The blood of nearly 100,000 people dyed the entire execution ground into a sea of blood. From then on, the execution ground was called the Confucian Pit. What was even more unexpected was that the imperial guards who strangled the 100,000 Confucian scholars did not stop killing. Instead, under the leadership of their respective commanders, they directly destroyed the mansions of the 100 Confucian scholars and burned all the books left behind by the Confucian scholars. And this action was called the burning of books and burying of Confucian scholars. The third thing that caused a sensation in the country was Meng Sheng, the heir of the Meng clan, the #1 aristocratic family in Xianyang City. He was sentenced to be hanged for 108 heinous crimes, such as being vulgar, arrogant, and domineering, privately setting up a torture chamber, raping women, and killing people on the street. Later, because the emperor remembered the outstanding merits of the Meng clan's ancestors and the Meng clan's sons who fought in the battlefield, he specially changed the hanging to the death penalty, which was personally carried out by the Imperial Guard's chief steward Jiang, who was Meng Sheng. Not to mention Xianyang City, even in the entire Grand Qin Empire, there was no one who didn't know of this. Normally, unless they died in an accident, it was very rare for a disciple of an aristocratic family like this to be sentenced for violating the law, let alone die under capital punishment. Chapter 727. If the mysterious rumor of the true dragon, the bloody suppression of burning books and burying scholars, and the law of the Qin state that strangled Meng Sheng indicated the change of the Emperor Qin. Then, what happened next showed the determination of Emperor Qin to conquer the world. Qin Tianyi, the third prince who was highly valued by Emperor Qin, had great hopes to inherit the orthodoxy and ascend to the throne. Because of bad conduct, disloyalty, unfilial, inhumane and unrighteous, he was removed by Emperor Qin and demoted to a commoner. Who is Qin Tianyi? That is the younger generation of Qin state who is more influential than Meng Sheng. Not only do ordinary people think that he can eventually inherit the orthodoxy, but those aristocratic families also secretly rely on Qin Tianyi, hoping to get the first opportunity in the future upheaval. The impact of Qin Tianyi's abolition was far more than the sum of the previous three things combined. Because with the abolition of Qin Tianyi, the power structure of the entire Emperor Qin state will undergo earth-shaking changes. When he learned that Qin Tianyi was demoted to a commoner and permanently suppressed in the imperial clan, it was Yu Haoran who had just used the 7th-grade nirvana pill to not only successfully restore the damaged foundation, but also experienced a rebirth change. He learned from the fifth brother Huang Zonghua. Whether it was burning books and burying scholars, or killing Qin Fengxiu at the Meridian Gate, whether it was poisoning Meng Sheng or suppressing Qin Tianyi, all of this can be said to show the determination of Emperor Qin to conquer the world, and it can also be said to avenge himself. After all, there are many ways to show the determination to conquer the world, and there is no need to take the risk of being crowned as a tyrant and make rebellious act. Your Majesty, I, Yu Haoran, will remember your kindness. Looking up at the direction of the palace, Yu Haoran secretly promised. Right. After telling Yu Haoran about what happened in Xianyang City in recent times, Huang Zonghua suddenly thought of a very important thing and quickly reminded. 9th junior brother, a eunuch from the palace who calls himself Chief Steward Jiang has arrived. At this moment, Master is accompanying him in the reception room of the pavilion. For the busy Chief Steward Jiang to come to Qingya Pavilion at this time, it was needless to say that it was for the engagement ceremony tomorrow morning. Since it was related to his own happiness, Yu Haoran did not dare to be negligent and rushed to the living room. Hello, Chief Jiang. Yu Haoran pushed open the door and entered his own place. He saw his master and Chief Steward Jiang chatting. Behind Manager Jiang stood a beautiful woman in her 20s. Her temperament was like an iceberg, but she possessed an exceptional appearance and a devilish figure. Although Yu Haoran did not know why Manager Jiang would bring a peerless beauty to see him, he did not make too many guesses as he greeted Manager Jiang. This old servant greets Prince Consort. He had known Yu Haoran for a long time, and their relationship was quite close. Therefore, he was not as reserved as before when he greeted him. Chief Steward Jiang, why have you come here today? Yu Haoran asked as he gestured for Chief Steward Jiang to take a seat and sat down beside his master. Prince Consort, this old servant will introduce you. Manager Jiang was not in a hurry to explain when faced with Yu Haoran's questioning. Instead, He gestured with his finger and gestured for the beautiful woman behind him to come forward. He then introduced her with a smile. Prince Consort, her name is Shishue. She is Princess Ling Fei's personal maid. Chief Steward Jiang, what does this mean? Yu Haoran frowned and asked in confusion. The second meaning. Faced with Yu Haoran's questioning frown, Steward Jiang first gestured for Shishue to stand aside before explaining. The first meaning is that Shishue will be in charge of all the etiquette for Prince Consort's engagement ceremony tomorrow. The second meaning is that before the wedding, Shishue will perform the duties of husband and wife on behalf of Her Highness. After hearing Chief Steward Jiang's explanation, Huang Zonghua, who had snuck into the reception hall, revealed an envious expression. After all, a peerless beauty like Shishue would be the object of desire of thousands of male disciples in the sect. But now, she was only a servant girl to warm the bed for the princess. Yu Haoran and Feng Qinyun couldn't help but frown. Chief Steward Jiang, have you obtained Princess Ling Fei's consent? Have you obtained His Majesty's approval? Yu Haoran asked in a gloomy tone. Sigh. In the face of Yu Haoran's questioning, the smiling Chief Steward Jiang couldn't help but sigh and confess in an indignant tone. Prince Consort, Princess Ling Fei doesn't know. Although Lord Wanxing knows, he didn't object. After all, this was all arranged by the Imperial Clan Court. Humph! Yu Haoran couldn't help but sneer when he heard that the arrangement for Shishue to warm the bed had been orchestrated by the Imperial Clan Court. Outsiders might not know how Qin Tianyi was crippled, but don't tell me the Imperial Clan Court, who suppressed Qin Tianyi, doesn't know? It seems that they want to have a taste of Yu Haoran's revenge. Prince Consort, you must not be impulsive. Hearing Yu Haoran's dissatisfaction with the Imperial Clan Court, Chief Steward Jiang, who was well aware of how terrifying the Imperial Clan Court was, hurriedly tried to dissuade him. The Imperial Clan Court is far more terrifying than you can imagine. Otherwise, why would His Majesty agree to something as absurd as harming Princess Ling Fei? Chief Steward Jiang, the Imperial Clan Court may be very powerful, but do you think they can control my will, Yu Haoran? Yu Haoran leaned back in his chair and waved his hand at Chief Steward Jiang to send him off. Chief Steward Jiang, take Shishue back to the palace. At the same time, tell the Imperial Clan Court that I, Yu Haoran, do not need anyone to teach me palace etiquette, much less a servant girl to warm my bed. Because I am who I am, and I am willing to become the dazzling firework for an instant. He then turned to Feng Qinyun and said, Master, I'm tired. See Chief Steward Jiang off for me. Okay. Although Yu Haoran's final declaration had been a little too tragic, Feng Qinyun was very gratified and supportive of his choice. Prince Consort, if I said that I was willing to do all of this, would you agree? Shishue, who originally had a temperament as cold as ice and did not say a word, instantly melted when she heard Yu Haoran's solemn and stirring declaration. Moreover, her eyes were filled with anticipation as she asked. I won't. Yu Haoran replied coldly without the slightest worry. Prince Consort, it is Her Highness' fortune to have met you. Yu Haoran's categorical rejection didn't disappoint Shishue. She smiled happily as she left behind an ambiguous sentence. Ninth junior brother, are you stupid? Giving away such a beautiful woman for free. Huang Zonghua grumbled after Feng Qinyun left the reception hall with Chief Steward Jiang and Shishue. Fifth senior brother, I'm tired. Yu Haoran interrupted Huang Zonghua's grumbling. All right, then you rest first. Your senior brother will take his leave first. When he saw that Yu Haoran's expression was a little gloomy, the astute Huang Zonghua immediately realized that there was a conspiracy behind the gift of a woman that he wasn't aware of. Chapter 728. I'm stuck. The sixth chapter will be after 9 p.m. February 2nd, Dragon raises its head. This day was not only the traditional day of spring plowing, but it was also an important festival for the divine dragon to pray for rain. However, to the citizens of Xianyang City, this day was not only a traditional festival, but also a day of celebration for the entire city. This was because this day was the day of the engagement of the Emperor Qin's kingdom's famous princess Ling Fei and the 100 Qi Gates Vice Sect Master, Grand Master of the Pill Dao, Yu Haoren. In fact, the entire Xianyang city had already become lively after the engagement was announced. However, the atmosphere reached its peak on the day of the engagement ceremony. In the imperial palace, the originally solemn and dignified atmosphere was rendered jubilant by the colorful lanterns and banners. In front of the Qingyuan Hall, the usually silent atmosphere used to entertain the courtiers had long been broken by the hubbub of voices and laughter. In the entire Qingyuan Hall, the entire palace was filled with an incomparably festive atmosphere. Prince Yifeng has arrived. Just as the many guests and courtiers in the Qingyuan Hall were chatting with a relaxed expression, a sharp voice announcing the arrival of the guests caused the lively atmosphere in the Qingyuan Hall to instantly become as quiet as an iceberg. At this moment, everyone present had the same thought. Why would Prince Yifeng, who was already at odds with the Emperor Qin, come? However, what made them even more shocked was that the eunuch in charge of announcing the guests announced the gifts that Prince Yifeng had brought. 9 Eastern Sea Bright Night, 9 Western Sea Jade Sun Pearls, 9 Northern Sea Deep Thought Pearls, and 9 Western Sea Setting Sun Pearls. It was the most representative pearl of the 4 seas. Princess Ling Fei's famous pearl had a good reputation. From this point, one could see Prince Yifeng's intentions. 9 pieces of Southern Region 4th Grade 9th Grade Warm Yang Jade, 9 pieces of Northern Region 4th Grade 9th Grade Fiery Yang Jade, 9 pieces of Eastern Region 4th Grade 9th Grade Machine Yang Jade, 9 pieces of Western Region 4th Grade 9th Grade Solitary Yang Jade. The most representative famous jade of the Eastern, Western, and Western regions also wanted to have the reputation of being a proud son of the heavens. It also proved Prince Yifeng's good intentions. High-grade Emperor-level sword, Gale's sword. The pearls and jades at the front represented the reputation of Princess Ling Fei and Yu Haoren. The magical tools, elixirs, and treasures at the back represented his sincerity. Following the announcement of the eunuch, the handsome Prince Yifeng walked into the Qingyuan Hall with a warm smile on his face. This old servant greets Prince Yifeng. In the rear hall, Chief Steward Jiang, who was serving Emperor Qin, immediately used his movement technique to arrive at the front hall after receiving Emperor Qin's signal. Then, he greeted Prince Yifeng with an obsequious smile. "Steward Jiang, we haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. Prince Yifeng couldn't help but sigh as he looked at his old face and thought of Chief Steward Jiang, who had taken care of him back then. 10 years and 3 months. After hearing Prince Yifeng's sigh, Steward Jiang immediately gave an accurate number, indirectly proving that Emperor Qin had been thinking about him and was concerned about him. "You're still so loyal." Regarding this, Prince Yifeng only praised Chief Steward Jiang. Then, he walked towards the treasured chair that had always belonged to him but had never sat on it. Regarding this, Chief Steward Jiang couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. Then, he followed behind Prince Yifeng and entered the hall. The Grand Marshal of the Northern Expedition, Marshal Meng, has arrived. Just as Prince Yifeng was walking towards his throne, the eunuch's shrill voice suddenly came from behind him. Didn't this old fellow never join in on the fun? Why would he suddenly attend Fei's engagement ceremony today? Hearing that the Meng family's ancestor, Meng Zhenkai, had personally come, Prince Yifeng frowned and muttered to himself. However, after hearing that most of Meng Zhenkai's gifts were top-notch spirit medicines and more than a dozen top-notch pill formulas, Prince Yifeng immediately knew what he was really thinking. In terms of identity and status, even though he was a prince and the emperor's younger brother, he was still slightly inferior to the Grand Marshal of the Northern Expedition, Meng Zhenkai. Therefore, Prince Yifeng could only turn around and take the initiative to welcome him. In fact, not only did Prince Yifeng take the initiative to welcome him, even Emperor Qin, who was in the rear hall, had no choice but to stand in the front hall of the Qingyuan Palace. This was because the expedition that was about to begin required the support of the Grand Marshal of the Northern Expedition, Meng Zhenkai, even if it was only in name. Grand Marshal, I didn't think that my niece's engagement ceremony would even alarm you. Prince Yifeng, who took the initiative to welcome him, seemed to be very enthusiastic. However, the meaning behind his words was sarcastic. A niece represented a junior. You, an old man, described your age. Prince Yifeng's sarcasm clearly carried a trace of humiliation. Unfortunately, Prince Yifeng still didn't understand Meng Zhenkai's character. Facing his sarcasm, Meng Zhenkai sneered and said, "Even you, a prince who has been missing for more than 10 years, have come. As the elder of Princess Ling Fei, why can't I, the Grand Marshal of the Northern Expedition, come?" Missing meant not showing up for a long time. Dying outside was a sneaky way of doing things. Meng Zhenkai's counterattack also carried a trace of humiliation. In the face of Meng Zhenkai's similar sarcasm, the smile on Prince Yifeng's face was instantly replaced by a gloomy one. His eyes flashed with traces of anger. If it wasn't for the fact that today was the engagement ceremony of Ling Fei and Yu Haoran, and that he was afraid of angering Yu Haoran, with Prince Yifeng's lawless personality, he would have already fallen out with Meng Zhenkai. Although his true strength was inferior to Meng Zhenkai's, with the power of the laws that he controlled, Meng Zhenkai couldn't do anything to him. "Yifeng, how can you talk to Marshal Meng like that?" Emperor Qin, who had long since sensed Prince Yifeng's hostility towards Meng Zhenkai, deliberately slowed down by half a step. It wasn't until the two sides were truly enraged that he finally appeared in the front hall and scolded Prince Yifeng in a low voice. In response, Prince Yifeng only sneered, then turned around and walked towards his throne. "Marshal Meng, please forgive me, Yifeng, Emperor Qin originally wanted to pretend to apologize to Prince Yifeng, but the voice of the eunuch suddenly came from outside the hall, interrupting his thoughts of apologizing. Emperor Qin didn't care about this in the slightest. "Western Expedition Marshal Zhao Yuanshi has arrived. I didn't expect that the engagement ceremony of Master Yu and Ling Fei would even alarm this old fellow." After hearing the announcement from outside the hall, Meng Zhenkai teased with a smile. The four great families of Xianyang City were the first-ranked Meng clan, the second-ranked Zhao clan, the third-ranked Li clan, and the fourth-ranked Yan clan. Among them, the patriarchs of the Meng clan, Zhao clan, and Li clan were all quasi-martial venerables who had passed through a tribulation. As for the fourth-ranked Yan clan, although no one held the position of Grand Marshal, nearly a third of the civil officials in the court were from the Yan clan. Chapter 729. Flowers whatever. PK, let nature take its course. Outside Qingyuan Hall in the Imperial Palace. Ninth junior brother, listen to the gifts prepared by those people. Look at the betrothal gifts we prepared. I want to turn around and go back to Qingyun Peak now. Huang Zonghua from the Qingyun faction complained with a depressed expression as he stood on a flight of steps not far from Qingyuan Palace. Feng Qingyun and Chu Zhongyu, who were responsible for preparing the betrothal gifts, lowered their heads in shame when they heard Huang Zonghua's complaint. In order not to embarrass Yu Haoran at the engagement ceremony, Feng Qingyun and Chu Zhongyu had put in a lot of effort to prepare the betrothal gift. Even Feng Qingyun, who adhered to Confucian etiquette, relied on his strength as a martial saint to rummage through all the treasure vaults of the 100-foot Sect's 36 peaks and gather a total of 36 betrothal gifts that they thought they could take out. Originally, Feng Qingyun and Chu Zhongyu thought that these betrothal gifts were enough to match Princess Ling Fei. However, when they heard that the gifts prepared by the ordinary guests were better than theirs, Feng Qingyun and Chu Zhongyu were too embarrassed to take them out. "Haoran, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Now that the engagement ceremony was about to be held, it was too late to prepare a new betrothal gift. Therefore, Feng Qingyun, who felt guilty, couldn't help but blame himself and apologize. Master, why are you apologizing? Yu Haoran, who was not paying attention to Feng Qingyun, did not know that Huang Zhonghua's complaint had made his master and eldest senior brother feel guilty. Ninth junior brother, it's like this. Seeing that Yu Haoran was distracted, Chu Zhongyu quickly told him about the betrothal gift. So that's what happened. After hearing eldest senior brother's explanation, Yu Haoran chuckled and comforted him. Master, eldest senior brother, I've already prepared the betrothal gifts for the engagement ceremony. You don't have to prepare them for me. Haoran, Yu Haoran's consolation and understanding made Feng Qingyun feel even more remorseful. At the same time, he secretly decided that he could no longer be as carefree as before. He had to create a foundation for Qin Yunpi. Master, eldest senior brother, it's almost time. Let's go. Seeing that the guests from the top and first-rate clans of Xianyang City had already entered Qingyuan Hall, he couldn't be too late for the engagement ceremony. Therefore, Yu Haoran greeted everyone before walking towards Qingyuan Hall. Your humble servant, Qin Xingxin, greets the prince consort. When Qin Xingxin saw Yu Haoran, who was wearing a light blue robe and holding a silver-white jade fan, slowly walking over with a smile on his face, the attendant of the imperial clan court, who was in charge of receiving guests, hurried over to greet him. Yu Haoran nodded and planned to walk to the table that was responsible for counting the gift. But at this moment, Qin Xingxin, who was in charge of receiving him, suddenly stood in front of him and ordered with a serious expression, Prince Consort, today is your engagement ceremony. According to the etiquette of the imperial family of the Qin dynasty, you can't enter through the front door. At the same time, you have to change into the clothes that the imperial clan court custom made for you. Yu Haoran clapped the thousand-bone fan in his hand, which had been modified by thaling, and asked coldly, What if I don't agree? Then I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you can't attend the engagement ceremony today. Qin Xingxin threatened Yu Haoran coldly. Ha! Faced with Qin Xingxin's cold threat, Yu Haoran suddenly took a step forward and asked with a gloomy face, What if I force myself to attend? Then, Prince Consort, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you have to stay in the dungeon of the imperial clan court for a while. In the face of Yu Haoran's pressure, Qin Xingxin's expression did not change at all. He clapped his hands lightly. Then, 3 experts in the martial sage realm and 10 experts at the peak of the 9th grade martial royal realm surrounded him from all directions. Looking at the 13 experts surrounding him, Yu Haoran took a step back and signaled his master and eldest senior brother to relax. Good. Yu Haoran looked at the 13 experts from the imperial clan court one by one, and his gaze finally stopped on Qin Xingxin's face. He said good 3 times in a row. Then, he put away the thousand-bone fan in his hand and took out a pill bottle from his storage ring. Then, he said with a smile on his face, Qin Xingxin, I, Yu Haoran, will not attend the engagement ceremony today. I'll leave the imperial palace and Xianyang City now and return to Qingyun Peak. Yu Haoran actually gave up on the engagement ceremony today. Qin Xingxin revealed a smug smile on his face. But when he heard Yu Haoran's words before he turned to leave, his smile was immediately replaced by nervousness. Qin Xingxin, before I, Yu Haoran, leave Xianyang City, I'll send the pills in the pill bottle to the imperial clan court. Yu Haoran, what do you mean? He did not even address him by his honorific title, but directly called him by his name. It was enough to show that the imperial clan court did not expect him to successfully attend the engagement ceremony today. In the face of Qin Xingxin's question, Yu Haoran opened the pill bottle and poured out a pill from it. Then, he explained with a chuckle. Qin Xingxin, the pill in my hand is called the spirit slaughtering pill. It was created in ancient times by a great grandmaster who was proficient in poison pills and was about to break through to the elixir emperor realm. As for its effect, at this point, Yuhauran's sharp finger covered the spirit-slaughtering pill with a trace of powder. Then, he flicked his finger at a ninth-grade martial royal expert who was surrounding him. Seeing the powder shoot at him, the peak ninth-grade martial royal expert revealed a disdainful sneer. He did not dodge the powder that shot at him. Instead, he mobilized his soul power and origin energy to create a second layer of defense in front of him. However, what terrified the peak ninth-grade martial emperor was that the powder Yuhauran shot at them actually ignored the defense of their soul power and origin power. It easily penetrated the defense of their soul power and origin power. Fortunately, as an expert nurtured by the Imperial Clan Court, he did not lack defensive magic tools. A low-grade martial royal defensive magic tool promptly blocked the powder that penetrated his soul power and origin energy. But what made the peak ninth-grade martial royal expert feel despair was that the powder also ignored the magic tool's defense. After easily passing through the magic tool, it shot directly into his body and instantly merged with it. When the powder entered his body, pain, itch, soreness, swelling, numbness, and other feelings that could be understood and described instantly emerged. The peak ninth-grade martial royal expert could not help but howl miserably. At the same time, he used one hand to remove the itch and numbness, and the other hand to use origin energy to hit the soreness and swelling. It did not take long, only about a minute. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.